Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto is a general akame ga kill. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by ImInYourAttic and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Two figures moved with nigh untraceable speed through the darkened hallways of a temple-like mansion. One black and red, the other gold and white. A young girl with long ebony hair reaching just below her knees with vermilion eyes. The other a youthful curvaceous woman with short blonde hair, twin tufts of longer hair that framed the sides of her head. Golden animalistic eyes stared out with visible determination. The two young women were none other than the assassins Akame and Leon of Night Raid. Their target, a retired general. Rumor had it he was getting recalled to the Empire. Though it was unsettling to them as there was neither staff nor security in the whole building. Yamamoto Shijakuni Jinrikisai was known in the Empire by many names. The Fire General, the Flaming Swordman, and most popularly the Ashmaker, for his tendency to reduce his enemies to naught but ash. He was a grandmaster of hand-to-hand combat, a swordsman of the highest degree, and a genius strategist the likes of which had yet to be replicated again. He was the one who subjugated the south and east for the Empire in his youth. He was a butcher, a monster on the battlefield. However, he was not a young man in his prime anymore. He was now approaching his late 70s with the many battles catching up to him. He was now an old man with dulling red eyes, an exceptionally long white beard, and long eyebrows. The many scars adorning his torso and head, most prominently being a pair of scars crossing above his right eye, telling of his many battles. Yet, even then with his frail condition, he had a very muscular appearance. Of all the things that people knew about him, his origins were not among them. He knew very well that Night Raid was here. It was why no guards or staff were here anymore. There were only 3 people living here and 2 were in this very room. The other was off on a secret assignment he had tasked them with. The 2 assassins soundlessly landed behind the man a few meters away in the shadows. Blade and claws were drawn, ready to strike. The retired aged warrior sat there in proper seiza with a cup of tea next to him, a worn sheath with a dark purple-handled katana sat next to him on the opposite side. He was dressed in a simple black kimono with a white haori resting on his shoulders. Sighing quite heavily, a screen door opened, causing the 2 shadow dwellers to tense. Out of the darkness of the open door, a young girl no older than 17 walked out in a maid outfit. Medium-length sky blue hair that covered her right eye ended just above her shoulders. Light blue eyes twinkled in subdued youth. She had pink hair clips pulling half her bangs to the left side of her face. A flower-shaped ribbon on the same side of her hair. Finishing outer accessories was a maid's hairband. Overall, she had quite youthful features. Walking up to the seated man, she poured him some tea before sitting off to the side of him. "Grandfather, there are guests in your room. Shall I get them something to drink as well?" was the soft, almost bell-like voice of the young girl. The fact she knew they were there was disconcerting, but to offer them a drink as if they were not assassins was odd. "Yes. Also, please take your time. It is late and you will need to pack soon if my prediction is correct. One more thing, granddaughter, get the letters I wrote from the study. The ones addressed to young Nagenda and my grandson. These 2 will act as the messengers of my will." With his piece said, the young girl got up, bowing before looking directly at the 2 in the corner. A raspy, withered voice called her out of her staring contest. Please do as I asked. We haven't much time." Shaking her head, she curtly apologized, leaving for more cups and to brew more tea. Now alone again with only the elderly man's breathing as company, the 2 walked out of the darkness. Fully visible for the first time since entering the man's domain. Akame was wearing a dark sleeveless tank top with a white collar and a red tie. Around her slender waist was a red belt with a red side skirt cover over a black pleated skirt. She had a pair of long black socks complemented by black shoes. She had a pair of red gauntlets with black gloves protecting her forearms. The long dark coat finished her outfit. Currently, she was sliding her tegu, murasum, into its sheath. Leon, on the other hand, was far less modest in her clothing choice. A revealing black tube top with detachable sleeves held by golden clasps clothed her torso. Pants that had the entirety of the inner thigh area open cover her lower half. A simple set of boots extended to his shin length. Around her neck was an abnormally long scarf stopping above her knee joint. It was simple, comfortable, and meant for seduction missions. Without ever turning to them, he motioned for them to sit on the cushions in front of him. Stealing a glance at each other, they moved to said cushions while never taking eyes off the man. Before they could finish sitting, the man spoke in a soft but razor-edged fashion. "You are good, daughter of Gazuki, wielder of Murasum." Akame tensed at the name of her father figure. "If I had been anyone else in the military, bar a select few, I would have never sensed you coming. Sadly, for you and your partner, I have not lived for almost 8 decades as both a warrior and general, by not being able to pick up on even the most subtle of bloodlust. Still, you did admirably in getting this far. As a warrior and fellow assassin, I commend you for your no doubt hard-earned skill. Sipping on his now cool tea, his dulling orbs never left the two admittedly attractive women in his line of sight. You're without a doubt curious about why I am so calm. Why I'm not trying to defend myself. The subtle inclination of two heads was all he needed. I am dying is the short version. I have at best a week to live. The many years of life, my overuse of my tegu, and various old injuries have caught up with me. I have come to terms with this. I wish to see my wife and child again. With that information given, the assassin duo were shocked. Arguably one of the strongest generals past and present was dying. It seemed unreal for someone who conquered the South and East territories to die in such a mundane way. Not battle, assassination, or choosing a successor, but of old age. It was almost pleasant in a way. Catching their attention once again, the dying man continued. I also have a confession to make. One few alive know about. My name is not Yamamoto Shijikuni Jinrikisai as I have claimed. No, my true name is Yamamoto Partas, of the Partas clan. I am the elder brother of Esdeith's father. I am her uncle. One. The silence in the room was palpable. There was no hiding a reaction to something that monumental. This man, the ashmaker, was related by blood to the most sadistically brutal general in the empire. Not only that, but the girl from earlier, Rem if they remembered, was his granddaughter. She was the cousin of Esdeith. This had to be a dream or some sick twisted joke. These people seemed normal and, albeit stoical, decent enough. How could they even? How was this even? How was this real? Leone was now fully sprawled out on the floor unconscious while foaming at the mouth. Akame, in very Akame fashion, simply widened her eyes. Silently waiting for the man to continue. Well, unbelievable, there were several things that lined up. 1. The maid, Rem, looked quite a bit like a younger version of the ice general holding a similar aura. The same could be said for the retired general currently sipping his tea, but his was far more refined and controlled. 2. The Partas clan were well known back in their prime. Thinking deeper on it, it seemed impossible that they just disappeared in what seemed overnight, save for one member. It made logical sense that some of them had survived scattering through the lands. 3rd, in his prime Yamamoto was considered unstoppable and unbeatable. He was hailed as the best. The strongest. Now Esdeith had taken up that mantle. When looked at closely, it made quite a lot of sense. Both had far more similarities than differences. Now one question remained. Looking up, the ebony-haired killer started to speak but was interrupted. My daughter and son-in-law, Kushina Partas and Minato Partas, formerly Namikaze respectively, were killed many years ago. Almost 17 years ago, come to think of it. Ram was only just a few minutes old when my daughter passed away from birth complications. Her husband had died a month prior in an ambush. Bandits had caught his hunting party while they were exhausted from hunting. Minato was the son I never had, so when he asked for my daughter's hand, I told him he could, only if he took up our clan name. His clan, the Namikaze clan, used to be well known in the north for bladesmiths, swordsmasters, and assassins. He was one of few that could still have offspring. Most of the others that remained were either elderly or sterile. The man paused to gather his thoughts. Sadly, when he died, he left behind a devastated pregnant wife and a confused 7-year-old son. So, when my daughter passed, I simply believed she had died of a broken heart, not that I blamed her. A coughing fit soon took hold of the man. Thankfully, Rem had just finished gathering what was requested and had returned. Quickly, with practiced ease, she placed everything on the table and was at his side almost the instant after. Sweat now dripping down his face with traces of red fluid in his beard. He waved off the young maid. Worried and slightly scared, the youngest Partas nodded, perched beside him far enough to be respectful, but close enough to help should another fit take hold of the poor man. Did you grab the letters that I requested, Rem? It was not a question. He knew she had. Yes, I did, grandfather. The letters addressed an agenda and Ani-sama, correct? The soft but curt reply came off as a bit clipped. Her baby blue eyes started to become moist. Good. You are a wonderful help and a beautiful young woman, Rem. Please remember that your parents, brother, and myself love you. No matter what happens. I need you to listen to your brother when I pass on, understood? His voice seemed tired, and yet Akame could hear the love in his tone. See it in his eyes. Right along with the sadness he must feel for leaving her in the near future. I understand, grandfather. Please let mama and papa know that I love them. I wish they could have been here with Ani-sama and me. Be sure to let them know that I understand why they left us and that Ani-sama knows too. About halfway through her speech, the moisture from earlier had evolved into tears that now flowed freely down her youthful face. Yamamoto simply nodded as he hugged his beloved granddaughter close. He knew this was hard on her. She only had 2 people in the world that she loved, and one of them was close to death. Sighing softly, he pressed a nerve cluster near the base of her neck. Sleep, my child. You will need your strength. Your mother and father would be proud of the beautiful, stunning woman you have become. I know this because I feel the exact same way with your brother. Laying her head on his lap he started to softly stroke her hair. Akame almost felt jealous of the young girl, but at the same time, she could empathize with the loss of family. I only ever wanted to protect my family. My friends. My clan. Everything I ever did was in the name of those I loved and held closest to my heart. I hold no regrets for what I did. Only that so many had to die in the crossfire. So many that did not need to die. It makes you wonder if there even is a god at times. I was called the shinagami during my time in the shadows. Then I was the ashmaker in the light. Yet both names were synonymous with the death I wrought on my enemies. The final lament of a man is said to be a powerful and moving thing at times. That even in the name of justice and righteousness a man is still just that, a man. About this time Leon, who had been up until now comatose over SD's apparent extended family, woke to hear the final words of the man she had been sent to assassinate. Right now the wild-looking woman was feeling conflicted. On one hand, this man was a general for the empire during some of its most brutal and bloody years, while sitting at the helm of that bloodshed. The blood of hundreds if not thousands stained his hands. On the other, he was just a man trying to take care of his family. Now forced to leave one of his few relatives in the hands of strangers. All because he was dying. He most likely saw or knew what would happen if he did nothing to try and remove her from the empire. Became and wielder of Lionel, I have 3 requests to make if you would listen. Again, it was not a question, it was simply him telling them to listen. Looking at each other they nodded. My first request is simple. Please give Najenda the letter my granddaughter retrieved for me. It has important information such as potential targets, guard shifts, informants, and the works thanks to my grandson. The second request is just as simple. Please take care of my granddaughter until her brother can get her. She will most likely ask to be a maid of sorts when she stays with you. I never understood why she insisted on it, so I stopped trying to change her mind very quickly. My third and final request is both simple yet hard. Please give my grandson my Tigu. It is his birthright. The heirloom of our family. He already has one, but that boy is special. He will find a use for Raij and Jaka. With his requests given, he waited patiently for an answer. Both Akame and Leon were hesitant at first. The first one was easy. Give the boss a letter with vital information on possible enemies and allies. The third one was also simple enough. Find his grandson then give him his family's heirloom. Even if it was a Tigu of immense power, family always came first. The second request was the hardest to grant. It could very easily backfire and expose them to leaks in location. At the same time, this wasn't the ashmaker asking for help. This was an old man nearing his deathbed, asking them to save and protect his grandchild. Okay, thinking like that made it a simple decision. Both looked back at the aged man and nodded. A brief smile lit up his usual neutral frown. Almost as if a smoldering fire were, for a brief moment, fanned back to an inferno. A small smile in all honesty forced both of the female would-be assassins to smile back. Grabbing the scabbard of the Tigu and placed it in Akame's grasp. With a nod, he looked back at the sleeping girl in his lap. Smiling at her peaceful slumber he bent over and kissed her forehead. He was a doting grandfather after all. Looking to Leon his gaze said all that was needed. Nodding she gently picked up the sleeping teen. Noting that she was not that tall or heavy at all. Maybe 5'1" and less than 100 pounds. Yamamoto stood for the first time since they arrived and while not tall, he was very intimidating to gaze at. The powerful, sleek courting muscles meant for power and speed were still visible. The entirety of his visible chest was crossed with hundreds of scars of varying sizes and depths. "Fuck with me, you will regret it," was what his posture all but screamed. Taking the letters addressed to his grandson and Najenda out of his lap, he set them in Rem's lone pack of belongings. With a nod to himself. He looked at the night raid members. "I will be returning to the north. When I die it will be where my clan and family are buried. I will not allow this corruption to cling to me as I pass. It was a pleasure to meet the next generation of killers. May you bring peace to this great empire and fix this noxious corruption that permeates our government. I will leave as soon as you are not here. I wish to enjoy the view one last time." With his part done he moved to the balcony to watch the night sky. "Oh, yes, I forgot." He called over his shoulder to the retreating trio. "My grandson's name is Naruto. Naruto Partas. He usually goes by Naruto Uzumaki when he is on missions or going undercover. He is the current Shinigami. You will know him when you see him." Resuming his trek to the balcony the black and golden-haired women, slightly wide-eyed, nodded making a mental note. Then they were gone. Silence consumed the room as Yamamoto watched them leave under the cover of night and shadows. "Be safe. My beloved grandchildren. My beloved niece, I hope you too can find happiness. Try to find your true family. Like all those years ago." Then he too was gone like a whisper in the wind. A figure standing about 6 feet tall cloaked in black sat atop a forest canopy near a cliffside. looking on at what was the base of Night Raid. The cloaked figure's face was covered by a porcelain white fox mask with red whisker-like markings. A sword sat on his left hip as bell-like chimes lulled into the wind. In a flash of white, the blade was drawn, and the danger beast that had been sneaking up on the figure was cut in half with permafrost covering the area. The blade, hilt and tsuba were all completely snow white. The tsuba and a hollow snowflake-like circle shinned in the silver moonlight. A simple white ribbon fell from the end of the pommel. Looking off to where the north would be the figure's side. So, grandfather now returns to the north. Maybe now he can achieve his final rest. My younger cousin returns there as well it seems. A deep masculine voice asked the forestry around him. Taking off the mask a single tear could be seen exiting light magenta orbs. As the hood falls long sky blue tresses sway in the breeze. The man's handsome features came into the moonlit canopy. Thick, slightly silky hair with the front falling across his face as bangs. Like a free-flowing cascade of blue his hair flowed in the cool air before stopping near his lower back. Hung from his ears on each side was the iron cross of the Partas clan, suspended on near translucent wires. Looking back at the hidden base he witnessed a flash of familiar blue. Just outside the north, a tall, beautiful, and slender woman gazed at the landscape with disinterest. Long, light sky blue hair and eyes looked to where her clan used to live. She wore a general's apparel. Long sleeves with buttons on the upper arms, a blue scarf on her neck, and high-heeled boots. A strange symbol or tattoo displayed proudly on her chest. The sign of her tegu, the demon extract. She didn't know why she was possessed to look that way. Nostalgia perhaps. My beloved niece, I hope you too can find happiness, whispered through the wind as it passed by her. That almost sounded like uncle. But how? Shouldn't he be dead? Try to find your true family. Like all those years ago. True family. Shaking her head, she turned to where she was sent to conquer. I will think about it later. A sadistic smile crept onto her sublime features. Let the war begin. Was her battle cry as her army of fanatical soldiers rushed towards their first target. A figure standing about 6 feet tall cloaked in black sat atop a forest canopy near a cliffside. Looking on at what was the base of Night Raid. The cloaked figure's face was covered by a porcelain white fox mask with red whisker-like markings. A sword sat on his left hip as bell-like chimes lulled into the wind. In a flash of white, the blade was drawn, and the danger beast that had been sneaking up on the figure was cut in half with permafrost covering the area. The blade, hilt and tsuba were all completely snow white. The tsuba and a hollow snowflake-like circle shinned in the silver moonlight. A simple white ribbon fell from the end of the pommel. Looking off to where the north would be the figure's side. So, grandfather now returns to the north. Maybe now he can achieve his final rest. My younger cousin returns there as well it seems. A deep masculine voice asked the forestry around him. Taking off the mask a single tear could be seen exiting light magenta orbs. As the hood falls long sky blue tresses sway in the breeze. The man's handsome features came into the moonlit canopy. Thick, slightly silky hair with the front falling across his face as bangs. Like a free-flowing cascade of blue his hair flowed in the cool air before stopping near his lower back. Hung from his ears on each side was the iron cross of the Partas clan, suspended on near translucent wires. Looking back at the hidden base he witnessed a flash of familiar blue. With a steady impassive violet gaze, the tall silhouette of a man watched as 2 vigilante assassins plus a young sky blue-haired maid disappeared into the hidden base form the cliffside adjacent to him. This man was none other than the grandson of the previous shinagami, as well as the current holder of said mantle, Naruto Partas. The current shinagami, a hyper-lethal assassin, mercenary, independent contractor, and his personal favorite but unspoken title Rems Ani-sama. Let it be known that he was a cis-con. A major one. I mean look at her cute pouting face and try to hold back your nosebleed. 1. She was a biological weapon and now his only precious person. His creed, his shinobi code, was his sister and lord before all else. If forced to choose they would never find the body. At least not intact and possibly in many wet, slightly cold pieces. His sister was his whole world. He would bring about destruction unseen since when the super-class danger beasts were hunted by the first emperor. As the current holder of the Shinigami title, he was most definitely able to level continents or multiple if he pushed himself to the absolute limit of his power. Let alone whoever upset his precious little sister. His grandfather was said to be able to cover the whole of the south in brimstone and ash in his prime as a general when he led the campaign there. All that simply by fighting at 1/3 of his full capabilities. So, what happened when he used more than that? Well, nobody was intact after half was unleashed. Everything and everyone for several tens of miles around him was ash. The southern regions were just beginning to recover after nearly 50 years. Some even speculated that the world could be turned to ash if he ever unleashed his third and final trump card. 2. Yamamoto Jinrikisai in his years before being a general was designated as a hyper-lethal assassin. A killer of unprecedented skill and efficiency. simply named as the shinagami. He was the equivalent of the hand of the emperor. Just operating solely in the shadows. Even without his iconic Tegu, he was feared by even those he swore loyalty to. Not just for his skill, but for his near-omniscient knowledge of everything that happened in the empire. It did not matter if you were hidden or in the open. He somehow seemed to know every little secret. Even the wily scheming honest was on some level afraid of him. Yet, the ashmaker never called him out or just never found physical evidence. Such was the power of those who earned the title shinagami. A title that Akame would have gotten had she stayed in the empire a few more years. Not that she would ever know or need to know. Such knowledge held significant sway in the assassin groups of the empire. The current shinagami was without a doubt formidable. He was close enough to his grandfather's level in most areas to have given him a run for his money, even in his twilight years. He needed only the life or death battle experience that came with years in the field and on assignments. There was one area that he excelled at. An area he could honestly say he surpassed his predecessor at. Politics and blackmail. Let it be known for all his training, life experience, and battles, Yamamoto was a shitty politician. He was unexpressive, but he had certain tells and was far too blunt with his mannerisms. Thus, he was content to simply gather and catalog information for whoever came after he passed away. Now, over 50 years of knowledge from simple guard routes all the way to under-the-table deals involving honest and so much more. All of this in the hands of someone who had one hell of a resting fuck with me and they won't find the body poker face. Someone knew how the political sphere of the empire worked and had enough skill to manipulate it to an extent. Well, not as good as honest or the people in his pocket, he was skilled enough. Naruto was also just as skilled at infiltration and nearly as good at spying as Yamamoto was previously, just added in with the skills of a politician. Peering back down at the now dark building, the blue-haired assassin stretched his senses to their maximum. Given the brutal, borderline sadistic training his grandfather put him through, he could feel the people in the building. It also probably helped that all of them had such large life forces and Rem was close by. They were somewhere near the middle of the structure. A flash of blue mixed with black sent his hair and cloak into the air. Fully uncovered and bathed in the shining full moon, our protagonist was now in full unobstructed view. Light blue tresses now sprawled out along his back as he brought a band out, pulling the hair into a high ponytail that now rested around his mid-back. In the commotion of his hair, strands of what seemed like crimson could be seen mingling with the blue. Downwardly spiked bangs obstructed his upper face, but not enough to hide the thin, neatly trimmed eyebrows and half-lidded piercing magenta orbs. The iron cross of the Partas clan now proudly displayed from his lower ear. Pale, near porcelain skin was visible as lighter tones crisscrossed his handsome angular face. Most notably were the 6 jagged claw-like scars that resembled whisker marks on his cheeks. The light blue covering of soft stubble covered his lower face, nearly invisible in the moonlit canopy. Covering his torso was a durable black bodysuit that clung to his lean, muscular body with segmented dull gray chest armor that seemed almost metallic in nature, covering vital organs. A medium-length snow-white furred collar finished the ensemble. His arms were covered in the same material as the chest plate, not unlike the arm guards a certain demon swordswoman wore. His hands were clothed on fingerless black gloves with gray metal covering the top of his hand. A ring made of red and black material sat on his right hand. Positioned on his index finger, the red ring had the kanji O umlaut nothing engraved into it. On his waist was the bleached white sheath of the sword that was now dripping with the blood of the danger beast he slew moments before. Opposite to it, the porcelain kitsune mask was hanging. As life fluid now dripped on the ground, the man's black hamaka blew up just enough to see the armored lusterless gray shin guards above a pair of black combat boots that stopped just above the ankle. On his chest plate and gauntlets was a strange red cloud with a white outline. Flicking his blade to the side, he grabbed the mask. The sound of a lone chime and a splatter of a liquid was all that was left as the man had disappeared. Inside the night raid meeting room, the boss of the group sat at the back with the other member of her small but skilled motley crew of misfits. Nagenda was a woman with short silver hair and a single purple eye. She used a plain black eye patch to cover where her right eye used to be. She donned a black, almost secretary-like suit that showed off her above-average bust. She had a mechanical right arm to replace the one she lost while defecting. To her left, like a loyal soldier, was Lubbock, the trap maker and pervert of the group. A young man with shoulder-length green hair that covered his left eye. Bright verdant eyes glazed with honest devotion. A simple set of red goggles sitting atop of his head. He wore a long green jacket with a fur-trimmed hood over a white and red ringer shirt and blue jeans with brown shoes. He had the tegu crossed tail on his hands in the form of a pair of gloves. Off to his right was Bullet. Also known as 100 Manslayer Bullet. A tall, muscular young man with blue eyes and black hair. For an outfit, he wore a black shirt with green shoulders guards with matching chest armor with white pants and black boots. A black leather jacket on top of his armored midsection. His hair was combed up in a heart-shaped pompadour. In a hidden chamber on his back was the key to his Tigu, in Curcio, the demon armor. Off to Nagenda's right was Mine, the inheritor of her previous Tigu, Pumpkin, the Roman artillery. A young girl of below average height, she was obviously of foreign blood to those who looked closely. Exceptionally long pink hair tied in twin tails laid on the right and left sides of her head. She had big pink eyes that matched her pink outfit. The outfit itself consisting of a tied shawl with a high collar, a pink long-sleeve shirt, a gown, and black stockings with pink shoes. Overall, way too much pink. The Mine's left was her best friend and polar opposite Shiel. Shiel was a slender woman with long purple hair and purple eyes. She wore a revealing sleeveless lilac cheongsam with detached complementary arm sleeves and white boots. She had her Tigu, Extus, which took the appearance of a pair of human-sized scissors next to her. She wore glasses with a thin scar on her right cheek. A brief cool breeze caused the lights to flicker as three female figures stood at center attention. Akame, Leon, and the Tagalong Rem had just arrived a few minutes ago. After giving their report of what happened earlier that night, leaving out the revelation of who they were truly traveling with, everyone was surprised, to say the least. One of the most respected generals in the Empire's long history had returned to the north so he could die with the rest of his family. Not only that he had given them vital information. Intel that the Revolutionary Army would desperately need in the coming times. He had only asked the group to watch over his granddaughter, deliver a letter, and return a family heirloom to his eldest grandchild. It felt a little too easy, but one should never look a gift horse in the mouth. Especially in trying times when all the help possible is welcomed. Yet, being a bit skeptical and weary never hurt. "So, Miss Rem, what will you do while we wait for your brother?" It was an earnest question that the young maid thought about it for all of 3 seconds before the curt response was issued. "If it is not too much trouble." A quick pause. "I would like to work as a maid or something of the fashion while I am in your care if possible." "Why?" was the neutral counter from the boss of Night Raid. "I am well versed in almost all forms of household chores. From cooking to cleaning I am quite competent in all areas. If I did nothing I would not feel right staying in your care until Ani-sama comes. I have always been the head maid of the household I stay in no matter how temporary." With that said, there was not much left to say outside of yes. This girl made a fairly compelling argument. Also, loath they were to admit, but Akame was the only one with talent in the kitchen. They were assassins and ex-military, so they had little in the way of talents outside of assassination. Let alone domestic talents like cleaning or cooking. Plus, if she worked for the ever-stoic and professional ashmaker, she was definitely skilled as well as trustworthy. That old man Yama was a crafty bastard. Not to mention I owe him for helping me escape. Never had a poker face worth a spit though. Were the thoughts of the silver-haired woman. Humming to herself, she looked at the young maid again. She looked like a younger Esdeath, to be honest. As scary as it was funny to picture. Esdeath, the biggest sadist in the Empire, in a maid outfit acting like a proper caretaker. Ha. Even funnier was the thought of her as a mother or sister. Odds forbid if she had a loving family of all things. If that was true, then she would kiss Lubbock full French. 3. We will allow you to act as such. Just know we will be watching, and if we suspect anything, we will have to relieve you of your duties. An almost unnoticeable chill filled the air at the not-so-subtle remark. It was more than enough for the young brunette to smile, gaining a slight blush in the process. With all of that out of the way, next on the agenda. Esdeath, the tenseness of everyone was to be expected. Though why did Rem brighten up at that? Has gone to finish the subjugation of the north personally. We estimate she will be away for 3 months at the most, knowing her. We will need to strike where it hurts while we have the chance. Grand General Budo won't leave the palace as he is too paranoid. So, we will for the most part be able to act with impunity. We cannot let this opportunity pass. So basically, we are going after some bigger fish. Was the query from the demon armor holder. He personally had no issues with it. The sooner the better in his mind. Yes. We have a chance to take out some big players. Why did she feel like they were being watched? Also, why was there a slight temperature drop? It was very unsettling. As silence fell over the group, Akame blurred into motion as she drew her cursed blade ready for an imminent attack. Not staying idle, the rest drew their weapons. In turn, the air fell even further into frigid temperatures. Bloodlust and killing intent now filled the air. The tension in the air was now thick and getting thicker by the second. Forming a defensive circle, cold sweat was now covering all but one's brow. Rem was, for all intents and purposes, was cool as a glacier. She knew who was here. So she had little fear. Though her heart did flutter a bit as she slightly swooned on the inside. Outside nothing showed as she kept her expressionless facade in place. Plus, if she was truthful, this was quite funny. Even entertaining to watch. Highly skilled soldiers, killers acting like corn prey. Did you know? A chilling voice bounced from every direction as permafrost started to cover the area. That as the body cools down, your mind and muscles do as well. Ice was now forming on the windows as the light seemed to be growing dim. Your muscle memory and natural reflexes slow at a similar rate. Everyone, even Rem, shivered a bit at the near-Arctic atmosphere. Right now, you would be easy prey for anyone who tried to strike. Did you also know people who are trained in icy and cold areas are able to naturally ignore these side effects as they grew a natural immunity to it? The room was now well below freezing as exhalation was visible while inhalation was becoming painful. Someone perhaps from the north. Ani-sama. Stop it now. You have made your point. Plus, I'm getting a bit cold. Trailed off the temporary housekeeper of Nitrate with a healthy blush. In that instant, warmth returned as the figure from earlier dropped down next to Rem in a half-kneeling bow. 4. Very well, milady. His now stoic yet accented voice replied from behind a mask. Ani-sama, why do you keep calling me milady? How many times have I told you to stop doing it? 9,102,005 times, milady. It was a statement with zero sarcasm. 5. Ani-sama, why do you have to be so infuriating? I want you to go back to what you called me when I was young. That is not possible, milady. You are my lord. Such familiarity is impossible and unprofessional. Though if ordered, I will acquiesce any request with all of my capabilities. Seeing what was hinted at, she could tell he was enjoying making a spectacle out of this. She slightly smirked as the previous annoyance was now replaced by a mischievous twinkle. Naruto partas. Everyone save Akame and Leon looked close to a heart attack. As the current lady of House Jinrikisai and matriarch of the Partas clan, I, Rem Partas, order you to call me Amato or Rem from this day forth outside of formal meetings and in the field of battle. As the sworn shinobi and head assassin of my house, you are ordered to accept this. It was visibly clear that she was enjoying this, if her mirthfully twinkling eyes were anything to go off. Nearly all of Nitrate looked close to passing out given how pale they were. Very well, Amato-sama. I hate you sometimes, Ani-sama. One twitch. If you order it, I will atone with my life for having drawn your ire. I really hate you sometimes, 2 twitches. I am well aware, Amato-sama. I know you're enjoying this behind that stupid mask of yours, 3 twitches. I have no idea what you mean, Amato-sama. You could feel the smirk on his face. All of Nitrate was now stuck between mirth, shock and disbelief. That was until Leon dropped to the ground laughing with Lubba close behind. Mine just watched, absolutely dumbstruck at what was happening with Najenda was in a similar way, just better composed. Akame and Shiel watched on with unchanging features at the near comedy routine going on. Bullet was chuckling quietly while checking out the male bowing before the maid. This man had a nice ass. Chuckling lightly under his breath, the now named Naruto Partas stood. He swiftly brought Rem into a light but no less warm embrace. Very well, Rem-sama. If you wish for it, as your elder brother and loyal shinobi, I will accept your judgment. Never forget you are my most precious person in the world. The poor girl looked close to going nuclear if her face was any indication. Turning to the now somewhat calm assassins, he decided it best to introduce himself. I am Naruto Partas. Loyal shinobi to the heiress of the Partas clan and head assassin of House Jinrikisai. I am the current holder of the mantle Shinagami. The current leader of the Akatsuki organization. 5. I am the current wielder of the Tigu, Sode no Shirayuki, the ice sculptor. As he finished, he gave a slight inclination of his head. Just outside the north, a tall, beautiful, and slender woman gazed at the landscape with disinterest. Long, light sky blue hair and eyes looked to where her clan used to live. She wore a general's apparel. Long sleeves with buttons on the upper arms, a blue scarf on her neck, and high-heeled boots. A strange symbol or tattoo displayed proudly on her chest. The sign of her Tigu, the demon extract. She didn't know why she was possessed to look that way. Nostalgia perhaps. My beloved niece, I hope you too can find happiness, whispered through the wind as it passed by her. That almost sounded like uncle. But how? Shouldn't he be dead? Try to find your true family. Like all those years ago. True family. Shaking her head, she turned to where she was sent to conquer. I will think about it later. A sadistic smile crept onto her sublime features. Let the war begin. Was her battle cry as her army of fanatical soldiers rushed towards their first target. Back in the north, a certain ice general was making slow but steady progress into the heart of the first stronghold. Casualties on her side were minimal, not that she was worried. She was leading one of the fiercest armies in the empire. While not as strong as she would have liked, they were no less skilled. The same could be said about the natives and soldiers against her. Any other general would have had trouble. Yudo could have easily done the same, if slightly better than her, if he were leading. General Yamamoto could have taken the base in a few hours and conquered the north in less than a month. Even with the demon extract, she would be hard-pressed to replicate that kind of efficiency. DSK. Even at 60, he was still stronger than Budo and myself. I wasn't around much while he was in his prime. Shame I only ever got to meet him when he was retiring. He reminded me of Uncle when he was still around. Her smooth, almost seductive tone sent shivers down the spine. For good or bad reasons was up for debate. She hadn't really thought about her family since they were wiped out in the massacre all those years ago. Come to think of it, she missed her little cousin, Rem, quite a lot. Such a sweet girl if a bit weak. Poor Rem would never be much of a fighter with her frail medical condition. She had the heart and spirit of a Partas, just not the body. If she were still around, Esdeath probably would have made an exception to her philosophy. The youngest of her cousins would still be able to fight, just not for long. Her older cousin on the other hand was stronger than her. Even all that time ago. She was quite fond of her time spent with him. He would teach her how to prepare meat and pelts when her father was busy, which was often as he was the chieftain of the village. Why was she thinking about this now? Was it because she was in the north? Still, she mused, those were good times. Carefree and never dull to be sure. It almost seemed like a lifetime ago her older cousin would help her hunt danger beasts and teach her so much more. Ma'am? I have the report ready. A soldier voiced as he entered holding out the papers. Taking them while skimming over, she was pleased with what she saw. The main wall was close to being breached. The flanking fronts were making steady progress on the side encampments. Another day or two and they would be through the first wall. Then they could lay siege to the interior. It would only get harder from here. Idly, she noted that these were extremely well put together and worded. It looked like a scholar or lawmaker had written it. Lieutenant, what is your name? Now that got the poor brown-haired man startled. Though he was calm, a bit of sweat rolled off his brow, even with the cold air of the north. Swallowing slightly, he replied without a stutter. Smsukezan, ma'am. Well, confident on the outside, he was weary of his general. Even more so now. Ever since they had started the campaign in the north, she had seemed almost lost in thought. He understood though. Coming back to your homelands after nearly 2 decades, and to top it off, you were here as its invader. She probably didn't care, but you never know. She had some weird, somewhat odd interactions in the past with other higher-ups. Smsukezan. What a strange name. Where do you come from? Certainly not the Empire. I come from the Western tribes, ma'am. More specifically from a seafaring village near the border of the West and North. My parents came from overseas before I was born. My name was actually quite commonplace on their continent from what I was told. He was not going to give too much. He feared for the R and was slightly worried they might go after them for having trade relations with other countries. Wiping his face, he adjusted his glasses, making them flash briefly. I guess that would make sense. If that is all, ma'am, I must get back to the front lines to help coordinate. Good day, ma'am. Saluting, he turned until he saw a flash on the edge of his peripherals. Instinct and years of combat came to save his life, as his katana came to save his head by a narrow margin. Steel clashed as they now stared face to face. Good reflexes, Lieutenant. Almost too good. She nearly purred out. Years of practice and experience, General. I've served for many years in your army. Was the curt reply. Excellent. I am glad to have someone like you in my army. Though I must ask about the ring on your left hand. It doesn't look like a wedding ring and looks surprisingly well made. On his left thumb was the black and red piece of jewelry with the kanji R green on it. It was a gift from a close friend of mine. He only ever made 10 of them. He just happened to give me one of them. I am not sure where he went, but I am sure he is fine. He was skilled at the art of combat. Now if you will excuse me, I must hurry to the front. Sheathing his blade while maintaining eye contact, he snapped a salute and left. The sadistic woman was left back in thought. Maybe after the war, she would take some time off. If only to try and relax for once. Her mind was all over the place, a sign of weakness in her eyes. She would need to talk to somebody. Good thing she knew just who to call. Leader Sama will need to be warned as well as the others. We don't need any breaches of security. Hastily entering his tent, he penned a letter. He gave it to a messenger, telling them it was urgent, with a small bag of coin discreetly placed in their coat pocket. Nodding, the rider sped off as Aizen made his way to the forward command area. A crow on a nearby pole watched the silent interaction, with Aizen looking right at it. The flash of black and red metal mirrored a flash of matching eyes as it flew off. Naruto very nearly burst out laughing from behind his mask. It seemed his gamble was paying off. Say what you will about his gambling habits, he had the devil's luck. With his forthcoming introduction, he had accomplished many things. He had established that he was a threat that needed to be taken seriously while showing he was still truthful. As well as being forthcoming with basic information that anyone could get if they looked enough. Another accomplishment was his little display with Rem had helped lighten up the atmosphere. Tense situations more often than not made his poor sister nervous. Given her weak constitution, he needed to take that stress away as quickly and efficiently as possible. If her own reaction was an indication, it appeared to be working quite well. Plus, he thought it was funny watching her grow irritated and Night Raid lose their composure. Besides, most of his titles meant nothing. There was little anyone could do with his position as the shinobi of Rem, head assassin of House Jinrikisai, or the holder of the shinagami mantle. They were of no consequence to give away to the group he would probably be working with or at least giving information to. Hell, even him being the leader of the Akatsuki was no big deal as nobody knew anything about them. Outside of them being an information bracket, that is. The biggest gamble he made was the name part his name. In most circles, it was a powerful bargaining tool. A risky one, yes, but the payout could be just as good. Similar to the clan of a certain subordinate of his, the best way to fight fire was with fire. In this case, to fight ice with ice. Even the knowledge of his Tigu was commonplace. It was a fairly well-documented weapon. The same could be said for Raijin, Jaka and everyone else in this room. Granted, it was incorrect information, but that was a moot point. So, what could have been considered valuable on the surface was in reality no more secret than the corruption of the empire. Known and acknowledged but not openly stated. The only true gamble was their last name, yet even then he knew Najenda was near always cool and collected. You look well, Najenda. Still smoking those cancer sticks, I see. With professional ease, he slid right into his diplomatic tone. How did he know the boss was the general thought of the group? You look the same as I remember Naruto Uzumaki, or is it part as now? Her own professional training falling back into place. I've always been a partis. But I have a feeling you suspected such. Given your rather checkered past with my wayward clan member. The stutter went by nearly unnoticed. Only the three to last see the infamous ashmaker knew what he meant. Standing up, Najenda walked to the blue-haired shinobi. Pushing Rem to the side gently, he strode to meet her halfway. Given his towering figure, imposing build, rather intimidating armor, and weapons, everyone was on edge as they now stood not a foot away from each other. Suddenly the man was bent over with her mechanical fist being buried in his gut. Even more shocking was the headlock that came after. You stupid bastard. How dare you keep me waiting? 2 years and not a single letter telling me how one of my best friends was. You absolute bonehead. Well, that answered if they knew each other was the general thought in the room. Throwing all decorum out as well, seeing as the first shot was fired. The poor stranglehold victim decided professionalism was out the door. Rounding on the silver-haired woman. He now held her in the same stranglehold, and to add insult to injury, he gave her a nudie. How was I supposed to know where you were? You fell off the face of the planet. The Empire's spies as well as my own never found you. It was like 3 days after I saved your ass on grandfather's orders that you left without so much as a goodbye. And you're mad at me for not sending a letter. I didn't know you were alive until a few months ago. That answered how they knew each other. Calming down, he released her, giving her a monstrous bear hug, pulling her close, much to the not-so-secret ire of one green-haired wire user. Sighing and returning the hug, she sunk into his embrace. Just like that night after she played turncoat on the Empire. She was still recovering when he had called a subordinate of his to help her. She had long ebony hair that was braided in the front, if she remembered correctly. He had been so worried about her that he refused to leave her side or get treated until she was in stable condition. Even then, he held her close that night as she thrashed around in her nightmares. Hell, the scars on his left cheek were from her. The right cheek scars were courtesy of Esdeath from when he saved her ass. She still felt bad about it, even though he told her it was fine. Looking back now, it seemed like just yesterday he held her like this. Pulling back, she looked him over, noting that aside from his height and build, he was still dressed nearly the exact same, just with different colors. He used to wear burnt orange armor, with black and red accents. She personally thought the gray-black combo was an improvement over the previously orange armor. Plus the fur collar was kind of sexy. Coughing lightly, she turned to address the room. As you probably now understand, I have a bit of history with Naruto. Making her way to her chair, she sat down heavily. Naruto here saved my life when I defected from the Empire, as well as kept me alive for the first few days, given my injuries. What you don't know is that he worked with me on a fair few of my assignments while I worked for the Empire under the Khalsan Kitsune with the pseudonym Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto Uzumaki aka Kitsune officially died in the crossfire between Esdeath and myself after being given false orders to take out Esdeath from me and my staff right before we defected. We were the ones who stabbed him in the back as he fought Esdeath. He realized too late what had happened. He was given a full hero's death as a loyal soldier that we used in an act of sabotage and cowardice. Taking a small breath, she gathered her thoughts. Unofficially, he helped in my escape and was killed in the process of holding Esdeath at bay. Bringing said general to her knees before dying of injuries, later falling into a river. The body was never found. The real story is a mix of both in truth. My general staff wanted both him and Esdeath gone. So they went behind my back to order the strike while making it look like it came from the Empire. By the time he got the order, Esdeath and my fellow turncoats were already engaged, making it look like the orders were legit. Taking a pause to let everything she said sink in, the others looked at the older brother of Rem. Nodding in acceptance of what she was saying, they looked back at their boss. The silent respect and admiration that they felt were easily understood and conveyed. Pushing forward, she continued. Esdeath had killed most of my once loyal soldiers before she turned to take me out. It was a hard battle. I had lost my eye and arm when Naruto was able to intervene. Given his orders and the situation he came upon, he believed that Esdeath had gone rogue. He quickly engaged, ordering me to fall back. I don't know much of what happened after I was taken away, but I later read reports from our spies. An entire mountain chain was reduced to hills, craters, and glaciers, with the operative under the Khalsan Kitsune presumed Kia after being used as a pawn by rebelling officers. Esdeath reported that when they fought, he was taken by surprise when he was shot in the back by one of my soldiers. The man in question nodded. He could recall the feeling when it happened. The confusion, rage, and so many other negative emotions. It was an unpleasant feeling. Apparently, he took multiple gunshot wounds while protecting an exhausted Esdeath after assessing that he was used. As soon as he dispatched my former comrades, he fell from a high bank into the river below. Esdeath had wanted him found so she could conscript him into her army as an officer. Further still, she displayed some remorse when all that was found was his broken mask, clipped sword, and blood-soaked cloak. Kitsune was officially claimed as a hero and a loyal soldier to the end. This was met with silence from all sides. It was absolutely shocking to hear the truth. Naruto remembered it quite well as he had been near genocidally with his anger after that betrayal of trust had sunk in. He had calmed down after learning that Negenda had no part in it, even though he had doubted that from the beginning. Her slimy staff always had him in their line of sight and just needed a reason to get rid of him. The silver-haired woman was in shock that some of her allies would do something so much like Honest would. It made her cringe in disgust even to this day. It only compounded into guilt when she learned that her forged signature was on the orders given that day. It probably didn't help she left a couple of days later while he was still nearly mortally wounded and taking care of her. Old man Yama had been apocalyptic in his fury with Rem close behind when Naruto had appeared in the dojo to give his report. As soon as his verbal report was finished, he fell over in a pool of his own life fluid. Yamamoto nearly came out of retirement just to make sure his aggressors were all brought to justice in the form of ashes to fertilize the land. Rem on the other hand started out nearly catatonic after seeing her beloved Ani-sama hurt so bad. She stayed with him after he had gotten back for every second she had to spare. It was the first time she ever came close to losing him and she would be damned if it ever happened again. After he was stable and his injuries accounted for that was when she joined Yamamoto in rage, as well as throwing herself into studying how to be a doctor. A field medic at the very least. He had gotten the whisker-like scars on his face from Esdeath, as well as a plethora of other wounds large and small alike. He had also been hit by 15 bullets along with 2 grenades. His old armor and weapons were destroyed as well. The damage to his body and spirit left him comatose for a week. Thankfully, he had a small healing factor, but that was for another time. With his alias Kitsune dead, he was free to take up the mantle of Shinagami as Yamamoto's chosen successor. Furthermore, he was given the Tigu, Sode no Shirayuki, to be his new partner. He later forged custom armor as Kitsune's was issued by the Empire. Kitsune was now officially and unofficially Kia in the eyes of the Empire. Being the pragmatist he used that to his advantage. From the ashes of Kitsune, the newest Shinigami was born. Nobody knew who or where he came from. All that was ever stated was Yamamoto raised the boy from birth and groomed him to be the next Shinigami. Not far from the truth in reality. The only difference between the two was it was Naruto himself who expressed interest in the mantle and position. Kitsune was a test of sorts to see his capabilities as an assassin. To say he passed with flying colors was an understatement. Coughing loudly to gather attention on himself, he addressed the room while pulling his precious Amato to his side. Now that story time is out of the way, let's continue where we left off. Yes, my real name is Naruto, Parta's older brother of Lady Rem of the Parta's clan. I am the current Shinigami of the Empire and answer directly to Emperor himself when I am called upon. I am also Yamamoto Shijikuni Jinrikisai's grandson. If you want the full story, go ask Akame or Leon, as I'm sure grandfather already explained it. If it is not too much to ask, Negenda, Rem and I could use a room bed. I had a rather difficult assignment before coming and had to wash the blood off my clothes. As you can imagine, they are pretty stiff and uncomfortable. Sleep would be welcome as well as a bed. He indeed was exhausted from the day's events, as well as his previous mission to deal with a problem involving Honest and his cronies. Let's just say there were many limbs and a few humans worth of blood that needed to be relieved from their owners to get his point across. Suffice to say, Honest's little circle jerk group lost a few members and Naruto had some great stress relief. Also, may I have Raijin Jaka? Grandfather said that it was a tradition for the oldest male of every generation to be given to him after a rite of passage. Well, I have a Tigu already, tradition must be continued even if it seems pointless. Looking at Akame, she need not say anything as the assassin tossed a Tigu to the man. Thank you for respecting his wishes. You're welcome. It's the least I could do after all you and your grandfather have done for me. Akame, could you lead them to a spare room? It was less a question, more an order. Yes, boss. Follow me if you would like a room. Wow, that level of inexpression made a rock look like a goddamned court jester. Shaking his head, the tall assassin put his hand on his sister's shoulder and led her out of the room before turning to look back at everyone. In an instant, the room grew ice as a snowy blizzard was born with magenta eyes glowing an unholy flame of death as the lights completely flickered out. We are friends, Najenda, that much is true. But if you ever threaten Milady again, I will turn you into a frozen sculpture and reduce your entire organization to smoldering cinders. I am giving you a warning now, as we are friends and I genuinely enjoy your presence. Even you should understand what the Iron Code and Shinobi Code are, including what they entail. Rem-sama is my lord and most precious person, worth more than either myself or the entire world. So, do not think for a minute that our relationship will save you, because it will not. Keep that in mind for future reference. The blizzard died as the lights were brought back on. Turning back to Rem, who was a very unhealthy shade of red, and Akame, who only flinched slightly at his gaze, left the room for a bed. Once they were gone, the whole room let out a collective breath of relief. That man was definitely not to be taken lightly. Such were the general thoughts of the whole room. Well, that was intense. Came the nervous chuckle of a certain lioness-like woman. No shit, it was intense. I thought I was going to die, the small pink hair girl complained. Sigh, he was always like this when it came to his master or sister. More so his sister. Well, in a roundabout way it is quite charming. Like in one of my books. An airy response continued. HMPH. He was kind of cool, I guess. Didn't need to show off so much though. He'll make me look bad in front of the girls. Whined the green-haired perv. Outside of the threat and parting words, he was kind of sexy. Not my type, but definitely sexy. Especially in that armor. I wonder how I would fare against it. Plus, he had a really nice ass. You get 3 guesses and the first 2 don't count. Back with the trio in the halls, silence reigned dominant as they made their way to an unoccupied room. Rem was content being with her brother and he with her. Akame was still on edge from earlier and fingered her hilt should he try anything. Boss trusted him, so that was enough for her. Weariness just came naturally to her since her training with father demanded as much. Having enough of this uncomfortable silence, he addressed the anxious demon sword user. Miss Akame, to her credit she only flinched slightly. I would like to thank you for protecting Rem-sama while escorting her here with skill and professionalism. On that note as well, I would like to apologize for earlier. While it may seem unnecessary, you must understand my job as a shinobi and older brother comes before everything. Including my life and friendships. Such is the job and obligation of the eldest. To protect the younger no matter the price. It is a job I take seriously, to the point some might call it unhealthy or fanatic. That hit her like a punch from Leon at full strength. Was the job of the eldest to protect the younger sibling. Even above their own life. To give anything and everything in order for them to prosper. It made her think of Kurama and what it would be like if she were in Naruto's position. He happily served his younger sister and said he would happily kill himself if it made her happy. Was she going about this wrong with Kurama? She would need to think about this a bit more. Idly noticing an empty room, she stopped and opened the door for them. Ushering Rem in, he turned to the younger killer. I understand what I said has caused doubt in you, as it rightfully should. I worked with Kurama on a few occasions and learned a bit about her. She loves you. Practically worships the ground you walk on. While it's a twisted and warped love, she only wants her big sister back. I understand you probably convinced yourself you need to kill her. He hesitated after the word left his mouth. I would encourage you to rethink that. I have a few friends that are quite skilled in the medical field. Rem is no slouch either, as she's healed and stitched her stupid older brother back together more times than I should have ever allowed her. Looking back at the normally expressionless assassin, he was only slightly caught off guard to see the moisture in her eyes and slightly shaking shoulders. Sighing, he pulled her into a hug. He tried hard to ignore her flinch and silent gasp. He felt a kinship with her if he were to be transparent. They were both older siblings that only wished happiness and prosperity for their younger sisters. They were kindred spirits in their love for their sisters. It was a tragedy what had happened to both of them. He had read their files by using his mantle to get the profiles brought to his desk. Sold at a young age and put through Gazuki's training program. Forced to survive or die along with 100 other children. Given a pseudo-family just for them to die. To slay your own father. In Kurama's case, forced to take drugs and experimental procedures that were killing her. All in the name of the empire. Looking back down at his younger counterpart, he gave her a quick squeeze before letting her go. Her watery red eyes stared back at him. He could see the mental and emotional strain this must have caused her over the years. It truly was a depressing situation and one he could only imagine in his worst nightmares. To love your siblings so much that you resolved to kill them. If it were him, he would follow soon after Rem. There was no debate over that. If she died, he would be going to hell to meet with grandfather and his countless victims after the responsible party sat in tons of ice or burned till there were no ashes. If you ever need to talk, my door is always open. I can empathize with how you must feel to a degree. I can tell you this though. It may be of small comfort, but Kurum can be cured. There is a way to reverse the damage done to her if we can get to her within the next few years. She is young enough that with time her mind, body and soul can be at the least mended. I'm tired and you have much to think about. I would recommend you call it early and rest. I will see you in the morning at breakfast or around that time. With that, he gave the shorter woman a reassuring hug and pat her shoulder as he entered his temporary room. Looking inside, it was quite simple and Spartan. Just a lamp, desk and chair in the rightmost corner, a nightstand next to the bed, an empty bookshelf next to the desk, a wardrobe just to the right of the door, with an armor stand in the corner next to it, and a bed in the corner. A window with half-closed curtains stood above the desk. Quite cozy in their opinion. No traps or spy equipment. Naruto looked at the bed and nodded. It would easily fit them both. Once he was done inspecting the room, Naruto quickly grabbed Rem in and hugged the life out of her as he checked her over from head to toe. Rem, are you okay? Did they hurt you at all? They threatened you, but it was grandfather's dying wish for us to work with them, so I couldn't do anything. It has only been a few months since I last saw you and you just keep getting more and more beautiful as time goes by. Gah. Soon I'm going to have to start turning boys into frozen sculptures or cinders for coming near you. ARRRRG. You need to promise Ani-sama that you will stay my beloved little Amato-chan for the rest of time, okay? Promise me. Promise. The poor older Partas looked close to a mental breakdown as his emotional state went from worry to anger to desperation. It was quite apparent that this happened often when they were alone if Rem's deadpan stare was anything to go by. Granted, on the outside she was deadpanning, but with the addition of a healthy red hue. Inside her head, she was losing her mind at all the attention she was getting. Not that she minded, but still having her big brother, her beloved Ani-sama, fawning and doting on her made her feel loved and special. Plus, he called her pretty and was proclaiming his intent to kill boys for simply coming near her. It was a bit morbid, but she was touched nonetheless over his declaration of love for her. Ani-sama, please calm down. I'm tired and want to sleep. We can talk more in the morning. She slurred. The emotional exhaustion was finally catching up as her eyes drooped. Nodding reluctantly, he turned around as she undressed to give her some privacy, much to her hidden disappointment. He placed his two tigus next to the wardrobe and grabbed a now unhidden black scabbard from the small of his back. Proceeding to throw it to the bed, he looked down at his still clothed body. Slowly and methodically he unclipped his gauntlets and torso armor and placed it on the stand. With his top half done, he took the hamaka and black sash that held it up and folded them neatly while clearing the wrinkles from it. Greaves and boots were unbuckled and placed at the base as well. Next was the top of the two-piece bodysuit. Looking back at his younger sister, who was now in a conservative blue nightgown, he pointed to his back. Understanding what was needed, she found the near-invisible zipper and gently pulled it. Broad and powerful back muscles were shown to the world as scars littered his back like a warzone. Old bullet and shrapnel injuries were scattered over the area. Helping pull his scared and tribally tattooed arms out of the skin-tight sleeves, he removed the black clothing altogether. His pale near-porcelain upper body was on display. The black and red ink contrasted nicely with his skin tone. While lithe and thin, it was nothing but pure corded muscle meant for explosive speed and power in equal spades. 6 foot and 1 inch with 200 pounds of nearly unbreakable bone and steel-like muscles now stood before her in the form of her doting brother. With a burning flush, she couldn't help but let her eyes trail over his half-naked form, as it always ought her at the damage that had been taken. His whole upper and lower torso looked like it had been put through a blender, but not in a grotesque way. If she were to ever be caught, she would, of course, deny it with her whole being. She thought it was sexy. There were a few scars that always caught her eyes. The small fist-sized puncture wound a few centimeters from his heart over his left lung. The bullet wounds over his liver, right kidney and right shoulder were all from his life-or-death battle with Esdeether backstabbing turncoats who almost got him killed. His 6 nearing 8 back had 4 long cuts running from under his right arm to below his pant line on the left. She remembered stitching that one up after a near-death encounter with a super-class danger beast. His left pectoral had a slanted claw-like scar as well that traveled over to his back. Hundreds of other smaller scars surrounded the area of his entire upper body on all sides. His whole body was like this, but she never got tired of seeing it. Looking down, he nodded to himself. He, without even thinking, moved to the bed and grabbed the black sheath. Placing it under the pillow out of sheer habit, he pulled the covers back as he laid down. Looking over at the heiress of the Partas clan, his silent command didn't go unheeded as she shyly climbed up next to him and snuggled into his chest. Chuckling softly, he looked at the already half-asleep girl on his chest and gave the crown of her head a feather-like kiss as he covered them up and wrapped his strong arms around her much smaller form as he fell into a dreamless slumber. As they were settling in, the rest of Night Raid was doing something similar as they prepared for sleep as well. All except for two of them. Agenda was sitting at the desk in her room under candlelight. Looking at the closed letter addressed to her, she broke the wax seal on it. Opening the trifold parchment, she started to read in silence. I am assuming this letter has found its way to you in earnest and good health, Agenda. I will make this as brief as possible. You will find some very interesting information in the folder I have given you. I will assume that you and your secret group have already been informed that I am either dead or dying, depending on when you get this. What I neglected to mention to all is that I was Naruto's previous lord. You probably could have guessed it, but my last order as his lord was for him to cooperate with you. This does not make him an employee of yours, more so a partner or business associate of you and your group alone. He has some deep-seated anger towards your higher-ups for the many attempts to have him and by extension his sister taken out. While I too hold the same anger, we both agreed that in light of this animosity, the larger picture of the empire and its stability is closely connected to Rem's safety. Do not read my intentions wrong. The second she is in any danger, he will kill the responsible parties, innocent or not. Direct or indirect, everyone will be eliminated with extreme prejudice. That was his only stipulation for taking my dying wish. While I would like to say you would be safe, we both know how much he adores her. He probably already made that clear. I trust you to an extent, Agenda, and know you are a well-rounded leader. So I hope this information will help, as it is just a small percent of what I gathered, not including Naruto's own spy network. I leave you with this as a sign of goodwill and to remind you of something. You owe me and my family a life debt. We saved you many times. Now it is your turn to start working off the debt you owe us. It's not a threat, just the truth, and you know it. Well, I hate to lord it over you, call it an insurance policy. I hope you can pull off this cleansing of the empire's corruption, because if you can't, you will have far bigger problems, not just from within. Many parties in and out of the empire are waiting for the right moment, and a single misstep could bring all of our work crumbling down. Retired General and ex-shinagami. Yamamoto Ashmaker Partas. Looking at the rest of the folder's content, she was surprised at the professionally written and articulated documents within. While not thrilled with the poorly veiled threats, she accepted that it was needed. She knew very well that he had been protecting her and her movements. She also knew very well that her life was owed for those efforts. He had lost plenty of soldiers trying to keep her movements as anonymous as possible. Still, any and all help was appreciated. Putting the letter and folder down, she rubbed her eye and put out the light at her desk. Taking one last drag of her cigarette, she left it in the ashtray next to the lamp. Standing up with a stretch that forced her bust to jut out, she disrobed down to her underwear as she made her way to bed. Making sure her handgun was still on her nightstand, she crawled under the covers as she let the darkness of sleep take over. She never saw the bird-looking ride at her flash red in the inky blackness of the full moon. Meanwhile, Akame was now the only person awake in the base. Sitting on her bed with her legs pulled up to her chest, she couldn't help but question what the senior assassin had said. His words were not meant with malicious intent. No, he really truly believed that it was his job to give his everything for his sister. It wasn't even so much his job, more so he acted like it was something he would have done anyway. Now that she looked inward, she realized she would do the exact same in his position, or at least something very similar. She felt like crying and it confused her. Emotions and feelings that she hadn't felt in so long, coupled with ones she couldn't even describe. She was by no means as emotionless as her facade showed. She felt like everyone else, maybe more. It was just that all of those internal things were locked so deep that she found it hard to bring them out. Plus, there was what he said about saving her sister. Was it really possible? He hadn't been wrong about her resolve to slay her sister. Could her sister go back to what she remembered all those years ago? She wasn't going to get much sleep tonight, she could tell. Back up in the north, the battle had come to a close for the day. It was a bloody day, to be sure. They had breached the first wall after a surprise visit from their sadistic general. She had gone to the front lines to see the progress after reading Aizen's report. While she held pride for her army's strength, she still enjoyed the thrill of battle like any other warrior. At least that's what everyone would believe. In reality, she was feeling something she would rather not. It was something she had a hard time recognizing. It was conflicting and contradictory in nature. It had been there since she had arrived up in the north. She had sent a missive back the capital and would, with any luck, get a response by the day after next. She was confident that she would get what she wanted. On the other hand, her forward assault groups were now camped out behind the first wall and putting down any resistance. It was proving harder than she would have liked, but still expected if she were, to be honest. As a native to the north, she knew the great tenacity that came with living here. If her adorable cousin Rem or her older cousin Naruto had been alive and here, this would have been far more enjoyable. But they were gone now. Even if a small unnoticed part of her knew they would have never died still existed. No time for such thoughts now. She was a bit exhausted after the constant fighting, and her small intervention, losing her shit on the enemy's wall, was over. Still, the commander's garrison in the wall had a nice large bed and she would kill anyone in her way to getting there. As she entered the room, a presence could be felt in the shadows next to the desk in the room. It was faint, but she could sense it nonetheless. It was a disturbing presence as it held no anger, killing instinct, or bloodlust. It just existed. Show yourself before I freeze you. No need for that, Lady Esdeath. I am but a messenger. The honey-like yet monotonous voice of the intruder was heard. The stranger walked into the candlelight, showing her once shadowed features. The woman had short, straight blue hair tied in a bun. Dull blue-gray eyes with lavender eyeshadow gazed at her with no emotion. Her mouth was set in a thin line with elaborate piercings sitting under her lower lip. Her trimmed eyebrows were thin and gave the appearance of a natural scowl. She had a large light blue paper flower clipped on her bun. Her facial expression was completely neutral. She wore a plain high-collared cloak. What caught her eye was the ring on her right ring finger with the kanji white on it. Idly she noted the ring looked similar to the one Aizen had as well. Who are you and sent you here? Growling, she was close to killing the cloaked woman. My name is Conan and Leader Sama has sent me with a response to your missive. Well, that was a surprise as well as equally worrying. Had someone intercepted her private letter? The reports of the offensive? If so, this could be a problem and not just for herself. Oh, and who is this Leader Sama of yours? It was better to get information before she killed a similarly aged woman. Leader Sama goes by the mantle known as shinagami. If her fellow brunette was nervous, she showed nothing. But that was enough to get her attention. The premier assassin in the empire sent one of his subordinates here. Why? Pushing forward, she continued. Why did he send you here? For a simple report. A report on the war effort was given to the prime minister, who was quite happy with your progress. Your personal letter was almost intercepted by the Revolution Army spies, along with the war reports, until Leader Sama's assassins dealt with them. He felt if the prime minister received your personal letter, it could have put the named party in danger. Leader Sama happens to also be fond of them, so he saw to their reassignment to the north, personally. She waited for the blue-haired general's approval to continue. While it was a simple letter requesting some specific help, Esdeath could see Honest pulling something similar to what the Shinigami feared. It was well within his character and capabilities. While irritated that her letter was read, she was somewhat thankful that the Shinigami saw to her request. The continuing after getting a nod. Leader Sama has sent me along with another assassin to escort them here. I arrived ahead of them to make sure you were aware that your missive was received and granted, as well as help in any way I can. He wanted to do so in person, but Prime Minister Honest is doing all he can to be a hindrance. I was also sent with a word of warning on behalf of Leader Sama if you are interested. Seeing her temporary commander nod, she prepared as this was about to be interesting. The Prime Minister is currently trying to have the interested party removed from the staff and arrested on charges of espionage, coupled with potentially being a spy. While Leader Sama claims this is completely false and has been adamant about their innocence, Honest is pushing the matter heavily without pause. Therefore, Leader Sama has been forced to stay in the capital to cover for their transfer. He fears Honest might try something, so he sent me and one of his top assassins to make sure they are kept safe from Honest. The ice now covering the ground around the blue-haired sadist gave away what she thought of this warning and information. Bound, the woman made her way to the door before bidding the general goodnight. Honest, we will have words when I get back to the empire. I will need to thank Shinigami Dono for this. Willing the ice away, she turned to the bed and ate there. With a slight physical and now emotional exhaustion, she fell asleep in mere moments. As the sun had just started to touch the sky in the young hours of the morning, the world started to stir. At the base of a cliffside in the hideout of Night Raid, its inhabitants were still sleeping and starting to wake, all but 3 of them who already started the day. The lady of the Partas clan was in the kitchen surveying what she had to work with. Some extremely basic cooking materials and foods to choose from were what she found. Still, she could make a meal for the 9 inhabitants. The shuffling of clothes and running water echoed in the kitchen as she prepared for making breakfast. Sighing, she wondered when her brother would return from wherever he went. He had left soon after she woke up, while only taking Ryujin Jaka and full kimono with him, Sode and his armor left behind. A few miles west from the base, the chilly morning air was forgotten as extreme heat was felt as you traveled further west. Something Akame was experiencing right now. She had felt the man leave the base and area, so gearing up she followed with the skill of a seasoned tracker and assassin. In the clearing not far from where she sat was a small crater surrounded by black soot and ash. Naruto had spent the past few hours practicing the basic abilities of his family's heirloom. While not easy, it was similar to Sode no Shirayuki's basic forms, so all he needed to do was practice his exercises with fire heat instead of ice cold. She heard him chuckle as if an epiphany had taken hold. Closing his eyes, she watched as he sat down in seiza and meditated. He stood as still as a statue and seemed to blend with nature, given how she could barely sense him. It took a few minutes and he was engulfed in a pillar of fire that rendered the small crater under him with a much larger diameter. Covering her face and eyes, the poor ebony-haired woman felt as if her lungs had caught fire as the pillar expanded, then condensed on the man. After 10 minutes the feeling faded away, she looked back at where he was with slight interest and concern as smoke covered his entire form. Naruto was having a tough time getting the fire Tengu to respond to his commands outside of the basic techniques. Damn, you're as stubborn as grandfather, and twice as violent were his thoughts as he struggled for dominance over the sword's personality. Sode had a gentle but agreeable temperament. On the other hand, Raijin was strong-willed and fiery. Comes with the elements, I guess, given the danger beasts each were made from, he guessed it was understandable. Sode no Shirayuki, the ice sculptor, was made from the body of a queen ice wyvern, while Raijin Jaka, the all-consuming flame, was made from a fire emperor dragon. Polar opposites from element to mentality and nature. Still, if he inherited anything from his mother and grandfather, it was his sheer tenacity and indomitable will. Suddenly he had a crazy idea. Chuckling, he sat in a mediation stance he was taught at the imperial temples. The idea was simple: go to his mindscape and subjugate the spirit the only way it would listen. Completely stupid and reckless. Absolutely. It took a minute till he was there, but as he opened his eyes, he took stock of the changes. Originally the area was snowy ice-capped mountain ranges and a permanent full moon. Now it seemed to be split in half. To his right was the mountains. The left was now a scorching desert at the height of noon, with a volcanic mountain range that seemed to be trying to take over the cold and icy right. Smirking, he vanished and appeared inside the main volcano. Huge volumes of ash and smoke filled the air, making it near impossible to breathe. Looking up, he smirked sadistically at what he saw. An enormous western dragon of several hundred meters, with massive wings and red scales, met his cold and sadistic gaze with the fire and battle lust only an emperor dragon could manage. "Are you scared of me, grandson of Yamamoto?" If not for the booming voice, his smirk would have grown. Instead, his smirk left as a frown entered the picture. He was not going to be known by that title while he was still living. "Well, I was going to be civil about this. But you have royally pissed me off." His cold eyes turned glacial and his frown renewed into a sadistic smile that threatened to tear his face in twine. An unnoticeable chill ran down the dragon's spine as the once masterfully controlled aura of the human was now fully unleashed. His slit eyes widened enough to be noticed as the lava and magma around them cooled. "Oh, what will you do? Grandchild of the Ashmaker." He would need to see if his potential new wielder was worthy of being his partner, and he was not disappointed by the response. "I am going to turn you into my new pet is what's going to happen. Maybe even a new set of shoes." If his aura was glacial before, then this was something well below that by several hundred times over. Ice was actually forming on his scales enough that he could feel it. A battle of wills was going on. Stalwart ice met consuming flame in a clash of steam. It took a few minutes before the emperor dragon was satisfied. "You will do well as my new wielder, child of Yamano, my new partner. The shinagami of ice and fire. The sculptor of ash and ice. A fitting title. Learn and use my power well, Naruto partas." His draconian smile was filled with hundreds of human-sized fangs. Yes, he would enjoy this partnership. Naruto grinned right back as he held out his fist. The Emperor of Fire looked at it for a moment before meeting the limb with his own. As they closed in and touched, Naruto vanished from his mind. Oh yes, he would enjoy working with the boy, no, the man with a will stronger than even Yamamoto. As he came to, he looked down and noticed his kimono top was now gone and his hamaka was now covered in soot and burn marks. Spreading his senses to the clearing around him, he smirked and blurred away. As the smoke cleared, Akame gazed at the now empty spot that once held her senior in the art of silent killing. That was until she felt what she thought was a miniature sun appear behind her and an uncomfortably hot blade near her jugular. "Did you enjoy the show?" teased the presence. She was at a loss for words until the blade left and she heard it return to its scabbard. Well? She could feel the mirth coming from her back. Looking back, she saw something that made her blush as thoughts she never encountered stirred at the back of her mind. The muscled and heavily scarred torso was right at eye level as magenta orbs gazed down in uncontained mirth at her reaction. She could feel the heat that now emanated from just standing near him reach her face and cheeks. Turning her head to the side, she found her voice finally. "I saw you leave the base and needed to make sure you didn't meet with an enemy." She was glad she could control herself as well as she could, or this would be a vastly different situation. I guess that makes sense. How about a spar? I need to keep my skills sharp and you could use a different sparring partner." His battle lust was on full display. "Sure. No killing blows or lethal contact, right?" "Yes. Can you control Murasam's curse?" Enough that it won't kill you if I hit you once or twice. Excellent, first blood then. Swords only by the way. With the rules in place he tied his hair in a high ponytail with a strip of his ruined hamaka. Play Sekiro os Genichiro Ashina, From Software has some of the best battle music. The two swords masters stood about 9 meters apart, hands on sheaths and bodies tensed. As a crisp morning breeze entered the clearing, they watched a single flower petal fall. The second it hit the ground, the ring of metal on metal cried out for all to hear. Jumping back, they sized each other up. Akame's stance had 1 or 2 holes as her blade lay parallel with her eyes outward curve facing her. Kazuki's assassination sword stance. Naruto's stance was more reserved with his blade resheathed while jutting out perpendicularly from his hip. His hand hovered over his hilt like a snake waiting to lunge. What is that stance? She didn't recognize it. It is called Batenjutsu. His eyes narrowed and seemed to bleed gold as he disappeared from view. Instinct took over as she riposted his strike at her neck and returned it with a high-speed thrust to his neck. Leaning back just out of range, flipped to a crouch at a 45-degree angle, with his blade now screaming from its parried position toward her chest. Jumping up, she backflipped out range just to meet his now molten gold eyes as his blade cried out for her neck. Spinning to the side as she blocked the swing, she kicked off his arm. He recovered just as her blade was in his face. Smirking, he muttered under his breath and he was gone. Red eyes widened as her muscle memory quickly kicked in. Gauntlet and sword edge met in a clash of sparks. Struggling, she managed to crouch and swing for his outstretched arm nearly unnoticed. His scabbard came to the rescue as it batted her off to the side as she grunted at the blow to her ribs. Looking up, she saw him settle into an odd stance. Blinking, she nearly gasped as he was now next to her with his blade and scabbard in front of his chest. Thinking fast, she brought both hands to her hilt as she prepared for a two-handed thrust. Only she was surprised when his sword was sheathed so fast, she failed to register that it happened next to her ear until it was too late. Rigmison was all she heard until her ears stopped working. She flinched this time as she now heard only the ringing of her eardrum. Clutching her head, she looked up as his back was now facing her. Smirking, she vanished only to reappear with her sword already nearing his neck as she silently relished in his brief surprise. Only for the look to be traded when she watched in near slow motion as his palm now struck her blade off course just enough as a few hairs now blew away in the wind. With unnatural dexterity, her leg came up at his ribs as he flew away from the powerful limb. Kneeling to catch their breaths, they vanished only to have another deadlock of Tegus. That was until the more experienced assassin dropped a hand from his blade to have a palm strike take residence in the middle of Akame's bosom, sending her to the center of the clearing. As he flashed in front of her with a lunging low swipe, she was ready as she sidestepped with a heavy axe kick, now finding its mark on his right shoulder. As he was being pushed in the ground, his open hand grabbed her leg, causing her balance to leave her. Tumbling down, she went for a quick swipe at the offending limb, just for it to leave her and propel him into the air. Rolling into a kneeling guard, she watched as he landed softly before falling to one knee while holding his shoulder. Both sword users vanished once again as the clashing blows were what went on for nearly 5 minutes. Each moved at nigh untraceable speeds to anyone else. Each swing was either blocked, parried, or dodged with nanoseconds of time in between each attack. One misstep and either one of them could die or obtain a mortal wound. It was as if they danced a perfect duet. Any onlooker would have thought it a moving work of art. Blocking, they pushed off and jumped back from each other panting. Smiles could be seen on both as they panted over the past couple minutes of movement. Both were bruised and beaten from the physical contact. One last strike, how about it? He was starting to feel his stamina drop below comfortable levels. He could tell she was at her limit even though he could go on for a while longer. Still, it was just a spar, so no need to go all out on his end. Though he would readily admit that she was by far one of the toughest and most skilled opponents he had had in a while. Seeing her nod, he fell into his stance as she did the same. At an unspoken moment, both sped at each other as they now stood with sword arms at full extension a meter away from each other. Then Sekiro os Genichiro Ashina. The deafening silence was unbearable in the first few seconds. That was until Akame and Naruto each collapsed to one knee. A slightly bleeding cut now marred the female assassin's left cheek. Believing she had lost, she turned to look at her sparring partner just in time to see a spray of red life fluid come from his already scarred chest and dribble to the ground below him. As if unaffected, he rose and turned fully facing her to show the cut. From his sternum to his right shoulder was a long but shallow wound that steamed before it was cauterized by his internal body temperature. A draw. His previous smirk was now a full-blown shit-eating grin as he walked to her down position. She watched in awe as his broad shoulders started to shake in mirth. That was soon changed as his near-psychotic smile and battle-hungry eyes gazed at her sweating face as her left eye closed in exhaustion and pain. She was reminded of how Esdeath looked in battle, but without the oppressive bloodlust. "You did exceptionally well, Miss Akame. I haven't had a spar that entertaining since I did so with grandfather." A gentler and more genuine smile came over his face as his battle lust came under control. In a few years, you could have given him a run for his money if you keep training. I look forward to working with you in the future and hope you'll watch my back. Reaching out to the still kneeling crimson-eyed woman he waited. It didn't take long for a small smile to unconsciously take to her lips. Reaching up she gripped his mid-forearm as he reciprocated the action. A brief feeling of weightlessness took over her senses as she was now settled in a bridal carry. Blushing at the close contact she stared at his face waiting for an explanation. You're exhausted and running on fumes. Since I was the one who challenged you to a spar, it seems only fair that I carry you back to the base. Also, Rem should finish cooking soon, and if we're late both of us will suffer with no food. His voice wavered at the end of his explanation. Let it be known he loved food almost as much as a good fight, so it was an easy way to get him to comply. Very well then. Even exhausted she was ever the pragmatist. Close your eyes for a moment. She looked at him questioningly. If you don't you will temporarily lose your eyesight. Nodding she closed her eyes. After a few moments, she began to question why she was doing this. As soon as she was about to open her mouth to make her inquiry something happened. She felt like her whole body was compressed and crushed as her ears rang with a gale of wind that sent her hair whipping at high speed. She felt the air in her lungs violently leave her in an almost painful rush. As soon as it started and happened everything went back to normal. As it stopped, she opened her eyes to see they were now at the edge of a clearing just before the base. She was thoroughly confused as to what had happened. She jumped a little as he motioned for her to put her legs under her still shocked body. As jelly-like limbs hit the ground she would have fallen if not for his arms and torso being right there. It took a couple of minutes for her lower body to work properly, but with Murasame as a crutch, she managed to hold herself up on her own. Glancing back at the much taller man her unasked question was answered by a chuckle. As they walked to the base, he half turned his head back to her as he began to explain what happened. What you just felt was one step below Shukuchi. A movement speed that can leave multiple afterimages if used properly. There are 3 speed-based techniques that assassins often use in sword-based styles. Shunshin or body flicker which uses high-speed movement to travel a short distance at nearly untraceable speeds. It seems like the user is teleporting, but in reality, they are simply too fast to be tracked by most people. Next Shinsoku or Godspeed which is self-explanatory in nature. It is the ability to move at godlike speed. Finally, the Shukuchi or rending earth is a technique that surpasses Shinsoku in speed. The Shukuchi has 2 variants in the form of X number of steps before Shukuchi and the true Shukuchi itself. As he was finishing up his long-winded explanation, they realized they were in the base. Sniffing deeply, almost like a dog, both could smell food and hear a small bell-like humming sound coming from the kitchen. Unconsciously following their nose and more importantly stomachs they were greeted by a breakfast fit for a king. It was a full Eastern-styled meal with a mix of pork and seafood dishes. Just looking at all the food made the assassin duo drool. That was until a certain blue-haired maid appeared behind them with an aura, not unlike a specter of death. Sensing the change in the room our aforementioned killers seemed to pale a bit more than their skin tone would mask. The male killer in particular seemed to have become a ghost in shock and fear. ONIISAMA if not for the aura of death he might have gushed about his sister. Yet the fact that she would probably beat him kept those feelings at bay. But the near mechanical appearance, the duo looked back at the youngest partis. Outside of her normal maid attire and appearance was the black miasma that seemed to pour out of her very soul. The giant Hanyu mask certainly did nothing to add their fears. Nope. The horrifying Hanyu mask making ominous noises and bleeding from the eyes had nothing to do with it. Nothing at all. Okay, it scared both assassins to the point they grabbed each other in terror. No ow, RMS P please don't do anything drastic. The shinagami managed to all but squeak out. Akame was looking little better. Both of their animated expressions fell further into an I'm-style despair. Well if you are going to leave and not tell me when you're returning and come back in your condition, maybe you should cook for yourself. You could hear glass break as both male and female assassins looked near catatonic. No food. Blasphemy of the highest order. Now Ram-sama you know I could never survive without your amazing cooking. If you cut me off, I might die. To see a proud warrior and accomplished assassin beg a 17-year-old maid like a child would to a parent must have been comical to see. Akame might have found it as such if she were not right next to said warrior doing the exact same thing. I guess I let you off this once since you haven't had a sparring partner in so long. As she turned to get the other inhabitants of the base, she turned just enough to show one eye and left with a barely veiled threat. But next time. Your sister is a bit scary. You have absolutely no idea how right you are. We should eat quickly and clean up afterward. Or she might actually kill us both. Agreed. But that said the 2 anti-heroes quickly ate their fill while still enjoying the food provided. As soon as they finished both bolted in an attempt to avoid the already irate part as Eris returned. silently agreeing to go and clean up in fear of making said heiress even more irritated. Following his younger counterpart, Naruto walked off to her side with a copy of his kimono from earlier, as well as Raijin in his grasp. After walking a small way, they arrived at a group of freshwater springs. Seeing as his top was destroyed and his hamaka was close to it, he simply unknotted the obi and let them fall. Reaching up, he grabbed the strip of cloth that held his hair up and let it fall. With the clothing beyond conventional repair, he lay his towel and fresh kimono near the shore. Slipping out of the lower half of his bodysuit with no shame in front of Akame, he stretched his upper body. Akame, who was doing the same, looked over at the blue-haired mercenary. While silky in appearance and nature, his soft blue hair seemed more akin to a lazy stream now that it wasn't held in a high ponytail. Upon closer inspection, there were thin streaks of vermilion that mingled as natural highlights in his hair. The same highlights could be seen as well in his surprisingly well-maintained facial hair. Think Rashi's from Naruto but a bit shorter. His entire body was devoid of any fat or unneeded weight. Every inch of his porcelain skin, from his face to his ankles, was covered in scars and old wounds of various degrees of severity. Idly she noted that his body had no hair on it and his equipment was easily the biggest she had ever seen. Naruto on the other hand drank in the nude form of Akame. He would readily admit that her lithely muscled nearing hergless figure coupled with her modest bust, she was a stunning woman. Add in the long midnight tresses and crimson almost ruby-like eyes and he would say she was a knockout without a doubt. Plus, the light scar marks on her body, while far and few, were incredibly sexy in his opinion. It showed that she fought, trained, and learned from every battle she had. It was a big plus for any woman in his books. Interestingly, she did have a small patch of black hair above her crotch. It was either well trimmed or naturally like that, he guessed latter. Seeing as neither of them had any shame, Akame from her hellish training and Naruto because it was beaten out of him at a young age, they had no issue looking at each other's birthday suits. They were both young enough that they would admit the other was attractive, but that was about as far as it went. To them, it was simply aesthetic. Slowly making his way to the deepest portion of the spring, he noted that it only came up to his chest and was lukewarm at best. Shrugging, he looked at Raijin and concentrated on the connection they established. Being in proximity to the Tigu allowed very basic abilities such as heat and minor fire manipulation. Seeing as it was similar to Sod, he based it off the same concept by gathering and releasing heat. To do this, he used a mix of a masterful control of his body and the spirit of the danger beast in his Tigu. A small known fact to Tigu users was that the Tigu had a spirit. Whether it was active like with Raijin, Sod, and Incursio, or it was dormant such as Crossed Tails, Pumpkin, and Leonel, was case by case. The only real exception to that fact was non-combat or living Tigus. As he continued the exercise and control, as he saw it, the water started to bubble and heat up exponentially. As it heated, he looked at Akame, who until now was waiting for him to finish heating the water. Nodding, she made her way to where a flat outcrop was before sitting down on it. The water was near her chin, but that was to be expected given how tall he was in comparison. Turned around, she looked back at him. In response to the mute question, he elaborated. "I'll wash your back and hair if you wash mine." Ah. That was easy enough. She had started to warm up to him over the morning spent together. Many times, he could have easily killed her and covered it up the same with the rest of Night Raid, yet he never made such intent known. While skeptical at first, she came to understand he simply had no intention of harming anyone. Unless they attacked his little sister. Then all bets were off. Plus, he was sincere in his mannerisms and actions. He had this air of honesty and genuine care for others, even if it was hard to pick up. She got up unbidden by her lack of covering and waded to the shallower end of the water to give him the access he needed. Turning around in the now waist-deep water, she heard him grab a washcloth and soap. Given his taller nature, he had an easy time washing her ebon tresses. Lathering her hair with firm but gentle hands, she hummed in contentment. He was quite good given he learned from Rem. Making sure to be careful, he softly ran the soapy washcloth around her back while keeping his hands away from her private areas. As he finished rinsing her back and hair, he tapped her shoulder. Nodding in compliance, she swapped places as he sat down. Doing the same as he had for her, she lathered his long blue hair while marveling at how smooth and silky it felt. After finishing his hair, she began on his back. Again, she noticed his skin was smooth, which you wouldn't expect given the extensive scar tissue his body held. Kneading and scrubbing his back was always an odd affair for her as his muscles seemed tense. Offhandedly taking note of the comfortable and addicting heat his body gave off, she started to rub his shoulders. The groan of bliss that resounded from his throat gave a sense of satisfaction to the smaller woman. She gave a small grin as she continued to rub and squeeze the knotted shoulders of the man. Finishing what she set out to do and the added massage, she rinsed his hair and back of the suds that once covered the area. Understanding that she was finished, he allowed a small but no less genuine smile of gratitude grace his features. Blushing lightly at the smile, she made her way to the other end of the spring, where it was shallow enough to sit but cover her shoulders. Naruto simply sat back where he was and sighed in the pleasure of his back not hurting as much. After a few minutes of soaking, he broke the comfortable silence. Naruto walked down memory lane out loud. This oddly enough reminds me of the time when I first met Kurum in the past. He could sense her surprise even without looking. Making his way over to where Akame now sat, he did the same right next to her while toning down his exercise so he didn't scold the younger woman. I was asked by the Empire to oversee the next generation of assassins back when I was still new to the mantle of shinagami. This was probably about a month after you deserted and she had gone nearly catatonic. Mind you, I don't blame you for leaving given the state of the Empire. He paused to gauge her reaction and he was quite happy with what he saw. The heartbroken and distraught look of the elder sibling was telling of how she really felt. Truly she did love Kurum beyond any notion otherwise. She was slated to be experimented on to try and get her working again. The false hopes and promises that she would outmatch you was more than enough for her to enter. I was at the time dealing with some of Honest's closer associates, you could say. Bastards were trying to get me under his thumb. It was probably 7 or so months later I was back in the capital. They were silenced and I forged evidence to legalize that action. He chuckled at what he did. Simply forging documents saying they were stealing that fat pig's food and supply of sweets was enough for him to be excused and rewarded heavily. After I had returned, I learned of the program and worked to shut it down, hard. It took a few months, many bodies, and a certain doctor to be convinced before I finally got it shut down completely. Sadly, I was too late for your sister. The damage was done and there was little I could do outside of run damage control. Her body was dependent on drugs and her mind was twisted to be barely recognizable. The only upside to it was the program was discontinued and she was young enough that I could reverse some of what was done. A heavy sigh was what greeted the enraptured black-haired assassin. Suddenly the youthful and highly decorated Shinigami looked much older. She could see the wear and tear of his position just by looking at him. By staying in the Empire, he was trying to run as much damage control as he could given the large amount of unethical and inhumane projects and practices. Painting and risking himself all in the name of his sister, his family, and his loved ones. It was admirable as most every sense. Anyway, it was probably a little over a year after your defection that I was given a team of 4 assassins to command for a top-secret operation. Kurum was the youngest assassin in the group. The mission was to take out a revolutionary militia that was causing strife in the western regions. Completion was far too easy even by average standards. It wasn't until one of those assassins tried to kill me. It was to be expected after all. That was their mission. Honest never liked that I refused to be his attack hound. He had many attempts on my life issued and eventually learned that it would never work. Back on track. 3 of the 4 tried to kill me. So, I ended their lives in a particularly bloody fashion. It was a shame he had to kill them. They had potential as members of the Akatsuki or his personal bodyguards. Oh well, they made their choice. What did Kurum do? Akame knew of her younger sister's fanatical loyalty to the Empire. It was near suicidal at times. Ah, your sister surprised me, I can tell you that much. Chuckling to himself, he was brought back to that moment. Flashback. The porcelain mask of the Shinigami stared at Kurum. It was intimidating to be sure. It was the same mask that Kitsune-senpai used. Apparently, the newest Shinigami and Kitsune knew each other, so he wore the same mask to honor his friend. He was much taller than her. Easily a foot over her measly 4'11". Covered in an unnaturally black trench cloak with his entire body shrouded by it. A bodysuit of the same color and a matching pair of gloves and boots. So no Shirayuki sat stained by the lifeblood of her 3 would-be comrades. The elusive shadow hand of the Empire 2A now loomed over her. A lesser assassin would rather take their own life than face this monster in combat. Will you also throw away your life? The tone showed nothing. It reminded the young girl of Akame on missions. Devoid of any and everything. Well, I'm waiting. Again, nothing was given away. No, she matched his tone as best she could. She was a bit frightened of the more experienced man. No. There was something there now. A quiet unspoken command. Explain was what it said. You are my superior officer and on a completely different level than me. My orders to kill you were more if I get the chance to do it. Those 3 idiots decided to try and kill you anyway. She had to hope that was enough to get her out of danger. She still had to find one Isama and be a family again. Now she was worried. That was until he started to laugh. Ha 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 ha, ah, that was good, you passed the test. Test? What test? I wanted to see if you truly were sent to kill me. Now I know what that fat pig Honest wanted. Oh well, you win and you lose. I just happened to win. I've got an offer for you. Offer? From the Shinigami himself. The best assassin in the Empire and shadow hand of the Emperor. She would have to be stupid to turn that down. She simply nodded and waited. The gray-eyed teen wasn't kept in suspense. "How would you like to be one of my personal assassins? Bodyguards or hands if you will." She was more than a little shocked. She was completely speechless. She was offered one of the best positions any assassin could get in the Empire. The Praetorian Guards to the Shinagami himself. His personally handpicked and trained subordinates. The Shinagami no T2B. Why pick me? It was the obvious question. Which answer do you want? The long or short? Taking a few seconds, she thought it through. Short. Please. Sighing heavily, his mask-covered eyes bore right into her soul. 3 reasons. I want to heal you. The Empire may claim that you were enhanced, and I use the term loosely at best. What they did is going to kill you and has stifled your potential. You will be weaker as time moves forward. Both mind and body. The next is simple. You got what it takes to be in my ranks. When you join, I will personally train you as one of my hands. The last reason is a bit more personal. When? Was he that confident she would say yes? Mind you, she would have said yes anyway. The final reason is it is my way to make it up to you and your sister. Now that really caught her attention. She silently beckoned him to elaborate. You should have never been put in the enhancement program. I had already told Honest and his advisors that I was scouting you and your sister before she defected for my personal guard. Wait. He was already planning on enlisting her before the program. Honest and his idiot advisors took you out of my reach and led me on a wild goose chase long enough for you to be taken to that stupid program. By the time I returned, your sister was a traitor and you were gone God knows where. So, in retaliation for undermining me, I killed everyone involved in the program and the advisors who ordered your induction. Honest learned very quickly to never undermine me again as a result. Now that made a lot of sense. She was scouted by him personally and people interfered with his operations. So, he killed them and destroyed the program. Then basically blackmailed everyone into compliance under the threat of earning his ire. Had I been sooner pulling the younger assassin from her thoughts, he continued. You and possibly Akame would have still been here together and under my strict command. But sadly, it seems the Prime Minister and his group of loyal dogs didn't want you under my command. So now here we are. The question remains, would you join the Shinagami no T? Flashback end. Akame was paralyzed by the confession. She could have waited and none of this would have happened. Naruto was already making plans to keep her family together and under his protection command. It was shocking and induced a mix of pride and shame. The pride that her sister and herself were that skilled and shame for the fact she ruined it, albeit unintentionally. It took a minute or two before she addressed the obvious question on her mind. What did she say? Her answer was him simply grinning as he got up to leave. Back in the north, the blue-haired general was enjoying a cup of tea in the cold morning air. She grew up and trained in the north, so the cold didn't bother her anymore. Even as she drank, she looked back at what that woman, Conan, had said the previous night. Honest had made a fairly large blunder. He was becoming bolder by the day and needed to be reminded who he was messing with. Sighing wistfully, she remembered when he did the same with those 2 girls and the Shinagami. It was a bloodbath and he had come to her for some interrogation needs. Something she was all too happy to give him. Oh, the blissful pleasure her sadistic heart got as she tortured those who undermined one of the few people she respected. That man was incredibly strong. Maybe more so than her, and that excited her a lot. Still, she respected that T&I was not something he had much skill in. It must have taken some of his pride to admit he needed help. He was suited for combat alone and dominated that field with an iron fist. The same could be said for information, espionage, counterintelligence, and spying. He was a spymaster of the highest order and deserved the respect it demanded. Brought out of her thoughts, she looked at Conan as she fell from the shadows. The party involved has been brought and the assassin is escorting them here now. It was curt and to the point. She liked that. Waiting for a few more minutes, the door opened and Esdeath allowed a small but wholesome smile to appear on her exquisite features. In the doorway was a cloaked figure and a woman in white. Standing, she made her way to the white-clothed woman and hugged her close. The woman in question was a noble maid and close confidant of Esdeath. It's good to see you, Emilia. How have you been? Emilia was a beautiful young woman of decent height with long silver hair nearing her lower back and deep purple blue eyes. She wore a white and purple dress-made hybrid outfit along with a white flower in her hair. I've been fine, Esdeath. Honest was being quite rude and accusing me of so many horrible things. She didn't even sound angry, just disappointed and hurt that people thought so little of her. Given her lineage, it was not too far-fetched. Still, it made the general's blood boil and her Tigu scream for his blood. Taking a deep breath, she turned back and smiled at the white-haired woman. Emilia was simply a kindred soul who lived and breathed wholesome happiness. She rarely got angered, and even rarer still was the idea of lashing out. The brunette general had been on the end of one of those seldom episodes and she didn't wish for it to happen again. Blushing privately, the noble maid continued. Honest and his cabinet probably would have arrested Mike the Ice to begin to form around the two women. But Shinigami-sama advocated heavily, calling me all sorts of embarrassing things. The blush on her cheeks seemed to intensify many times over. Oh, and what kind of embarrassing things did he call you? To see the poor woman this flustered was a treat, and Esdeath was going to milk it for all it's worth. He called me a shining example of nobility and a woman who deserves more than a simple maid's position. He even called me the perfect noble, making a pouting face with her cheeks still red. She muttered something that Esdeath managed to catch. He even went as far as tell off every noble there and say they should learn from my example. The part as survivor was caught between laughing and agreeing with the shadow hand and his assessment of her white-haired friend. He was completely right in how he described Emilia. Maybe even more so given the company it was set in. Still, she would have to thank him for what he did. Emilia was a confidant and, dare she say, close friend. Hell would rise if she were harmed. She would have to send him her regards and potentially reward him for his service, albeit unintentionally on his end. Remembering who else was in the room, she turned to the cloaked figure, who in return opened the cloak and removed the hood. The figure was revealed to be a young woman just a bit shorter than Emilia. She had short black hair and a twin-tail style with stormcloud gray eyes. She wore a black sailor uniform with a red belt holding a katana. Her skirt had a red side portion overlapping the black. Her shirt is slightly too short as it didn't cover her belly button. She wore red plated gauntlets and greaves. Her legs along with the greaves were covered with long black socks and black shoes. Again, a red colored ring was shown on someone. This time on the right pointer finger with a kanji for 4. My master the Shinigami ordered me to escort Lady Emilia to you, Lady Esdeath. She had a soft, somewhat hushed monotone. Would you give your name? I'd like to add it when I personally thank your master for what he has done. While it seemed pleasant, it was really an order. After a minute of debate, she sighed silently. The truth would come out eventually anyway. I am a senior member of the Shinigami no T. I work as Master Shinigami's right hand and personal bodyguard. My name, the silent debate was back again. My name is Kurum. Time skip 3 months. Beginning of canon for the anime manga. Our blue-haired protagonist was walking along a road towards the Empire. He had forgotten his Shinigami attire and settled for simple black battle kimono, not unlike what his grandfather once wore, with matching sandals and a traveler's trench coat. Sode sat at his side as the ever-faithful companion she was. His reason for being this far from the capital was because one of his informants had told him of 3 potential recruits for the Shinigami no T. Naturally, he went to meet these people only to find them nearly dead and several assassins hired by Honest waiting for him. For a man of his skill and caliber, it was little more than an early morning exercise routine. Still, it was regrettably for a young man and woman to be taken when they had talent. The young lad and lass were from a frontier village not far from where here. They grew up similarly to how Esdeath and himself had while in the north. While they weren't ugly by any means, the teens were decently attractive. Black hair with soft eyes and a smile that screamed confidence, and the young woman with black hair and similar eyes. They had the drive to go far and never give up. Both were people he would have loved to train. Disappointingly, Honest had taken another set of potential recruits and killed them, only this time 2 of the 3 died. Seo and Ieyasu were the names of the duo if he recalled. For people from the frontier and little human-based combat, they did remarkably well. Killing nearly 15 of the 20 highly trained assassins was a feat worthy of respect. With his dying breath, the male, Ieyasu, had asked for Naruto to look after his friend, should he find them. He agreed, of course, it was the least he could do. Plus, he was here to recruit them anyway. Now he was on his way back to the capital while thinking of how to deal with Honest. This was the 3rd set of possible recruits in nearly a year. That fat pig of a man obviously knew how high his standards are and how few could make the cut. Maybe Sierra, Honest's son, would make for a good example. Forge some charges, publicize them, and kill the man under the guise of treason or something of that nature. It was a nice thought, but Sierra already had enough on him to make killing him legal and almost praiseworthy. Unconsciously waving at the caravan next to him, he was brought from his homicidal thoughts as an earth dragon came from the ground a few meters in front of him. As he reached for his sword, the dragon fell to the ground in pieces. Looking at the culprit of the masterful if slightly unrefined kill, he saw the last of the scouted people, Tatsumi if memory served. The young man had a lightly muscled build, perfect for a close-quarter swordsman. As for appearance, he was of average height with green eyes and medium-length brown hair with a cowlick that fell to the side with its weight. He wore a white high-collar jacket over a tan sweater vest, a pair of black pants, brown gloves, and combat boots. A sword sat in his back as it had already been returned to the sheath. He was impressed with the young man. Killing an A-class danger beast was nothing to scoff at, and from what the young man was saying about joining the military, he could easily make captain within a year. Still, he would pop the kid the question later. He wanted to monitor the younger teen as he discovered the Empire's vile nature. He would have his shadows do it for him as he had bigger things to think about. 1. Turning to Tatsumi, he cleared his throat as the caravan leader gave the kid a bag of money. That was quite impressive, young man. May I ask for your name? Might as well get to know the kid a bit. My name is Tatsumi and I'm going to the capital to join the army. He proclaimed loudly with a grin and exaggerated gesture. Completely ignorant to the worried glances being shot at him by the civilians he saved. You certainly are an interesting fellow, aren't you? Would you mind escorting me, young man? I am in a small hurry and would appreciate a skilled warrior like yourself to make sure nothing happens. You never know what can occur out there. He would play himself off as a noble or wealthy man for now. Well, he was one, so it wasn't really an act. Sure. Do you think you could put in a good word for me? My village needs money badly, so I need to get promoted quickly so I can get them the funds to survive. Naruto was taken slightly aback by the open and noble nature. It was a breath of fresh air if he were truthful. I'll make sure to do that, young man. With that said and done, the duo left the now worried caravan members towards the gates of the capital. The whole affair was quite uneventful from the walk to getting inside the city itself. Biting young Tatsumi well and reassuring him of a good word from a noble, he made his way to the palace. He now had time to think of how to get back at the fat bastard for killing his would-be recruits. A small but no less sadistic smile crept onto his handsome features as he thought of the perfect punishment for how he would kill Sire. His thoughts now turned to killing the man. More so how best to kill Sire in legal channels. Perhaps Aizen had found a loophole he could use to make sure Honest couldn't pull strings. The man was stupidly smart and cunning when it came to law and legal things. If Esdeith's reports were to be believed, then he could expect them back in a fortnight. That just gave him more time to put a case together and end the arrogant little gnat. It took maybe another half hour after entering the gates of the massive city to get to the innermost circle, the royal grounds. He would need to talk with some of the less corrupt members of the royal faculty before he did anything. Even the shadow hand of the empire and shinagami had to have a reason for his actions. Arriving at the palace, he had to hold back a sneer that threatened to come out. All the gaudy and over-the-top decor further ruined his mood and reinforced his opinion on his cleansing. He did enjoy the garden though. He always loved Mother Nature and held a deep respect and connection with her. Looking up as his eyes ceased to be glazed and thought he saw the doors to the throne room. His nose recoiled in disgust as he nearly lost his lunch. He could smell that fat pig from here. The stench of greasy food, sweet and corruption so vile in combination, he wished to cut his nose off. Still, he had to preserve her and deal with the pile of flesh. Ah, Shinagami, how was your hunt for those recruits? Did they agree to join you? Oh, he could feel the smug bastard patronizing him. He knew damn well what happened. Sadly, I made it a bit too late. Some bandits got to the young lad and lass before I could. Still, the two slaughtered most of them by the time I made my debut on the scene. Quite impressive if I am to be truthful honest. The venom used on his name nearly made the Prime Minister flinch. He may have overstepped. No matter, he was safe from repercussions. That is terribly sad to hear. The two would have made excellent members of your guard, I assume. I was under the impression there were 3 though. What happened to the other one? You should never try and fish against a man who grew up on the frontier barehanding aquatic danger beast. He ended up fighting an S-class danger beast not far from where his friends died. They killed each other from the grievous wounds of their battle. He could have easily become a senior member in 5 years' time if he worked hard. The 3 of them combined could have easily made up my new elite internal strike team. I give you my condolences and wish you luck with your next set of potential recruits. Naruto threw up a bit in his mouth at that. I thank you for your kind wishes, Honest. As he turned to leave, he concluded a gamble was in order. Emperor Makoto, it has come to my attention that the son of our benevolent Prime Minister has been up to some troubling actions. My spies and informants tell me he has broken many of the laws that you personally set forth. While I do not have a full list of what I have so far is quite extensive in nature. Almost 100 different counts of illegal acts. It was a total bluff, but a believable one if the reaction he got was any indication. The statement had caused Honest to freeze up. Who in turn now suspected he pushed his boundaries too far with a shadow hand. That is horrible. Do you think that Prime Minister Honest knew of this? The poor innocent mind of an 11-year-old emperor. He never stood a chance against the fat pig and his machinations. Still, this would be a perfect time to show said fat pig why not to mess with the Shinagami. I believe that our esteemed minister knew of something, but choose to believe that it was lies and slander against his child. Such is the will of a competent and loving parent. Honest was now very worried. He now knew for a fact his actions had come back to haunt him. There were very few ways to skirt his way out of this. Oh, that makes sense. Still, if he has committed crimes he must be punished. Is that not correct, Minister Honest? Revenge tasted incredibly good right now. Watching that thing posing as a human as it was squirming, Naruto found it both amusing and fitting if equally disgusting. Why yes of course Emperor Makoto. You truly are a bright young boy. Turning to the shinagami he lost his faked enthusiasm. He would need to find a loophole to save his ass and maybe his sons. Make sure you find as much as you can. We will need a strong case. Perhaps I might be of some assistance. It was a long shot given Naruto's history as the Shadow Hand, but it should be tried anyway. Your willingness to help is admirable. Though I fear your position as his father would hinder the investigation. Your bias could make you blind to some aspects. Would you not agree Emperor Makoto? Squirm and writhe in discomfort you waste of breath keep flailing about in fear were his sadistic thoughts. You make a good point. The minister is a loving and gentleman. He would be compelled to help his son. Isn't that right Prime Minister? Smart child. Naive and clueless but still smart. Yes of course. I admit that while unlikely I may still show unintentional bias in his favor. Please make sure to bring us your findings Shinigami. We should check the validity of these claims before anything is done. Smiling behind the mask his fox-like grin split his face in two. He loved watching the fat man try and keep his composure. While watching his body jiggle was nauseating and horrifying, he took pleasure in the emotional and mental pressure he imposed on that thing. By your leave Emperor Makoto. I shall start the investigation at once. After giving a short bow he left the room with nary a sound. He had much work to do and little time to do it. Walking through the halls of the palace was equal to navigating a maze with no map. Only people who worked there or spent years in this vile building knew how to move about. Lavish pictures of emperors and ministers past and present, towering spires of expensive metals woven into the architecture, and so many other needlessly extravagant things served as a reminder of his own humble beginning. His grandfather never spoiled him or went easy on him. If he fucked up, then he was given an equal if not harsher punishment. Yamamoto was far from a perfect parent, but he was better than most. His training and methods of teaching could be considered borderline sadistic in nature if not homicidal at times. The joys of growing up on the northern frontier. Still, he had arrogance beaten and tortured out of him the second it reared its sin-filled head. Discreetly scanning the surrounding area with no sign of people he moved for a partition on the corridor's corner. Gently he moved a pillar slightly and watched as a passageway opened. Swiftly he all but glided in as it silently closed behind him. Lanterns lit the walls as he made his way down winding halls until coming to a door with a symbol on it. 2A. Opening the door, he was welcomed to a large yet simple grand hall. Banners bearing the same markings as the door hung from the decently high ceiling. This was the headquarters of his personal guard. It was constructed and situated about 50 meters under the palace itself. 2B. Making his way deeper into the hidden structure he entered a room. The room was of medium size with bookshelves surrounding 2 of the 4 walls. The other wall had a pair of semi-fancy couches with single lounging chairs on the short ends of the coffee table, situated next to a small table perfect for refreshments with traditional tea mugs and sake saucers already stacked and displayed neatly. Each bookshelf in the room was filled to the brim with scrolls, books, maps, and letters of varying size and age. In the corner of the room next to the shelves was a desk with a simple but comfortable leather chair seated behind the wooden furniture. A pair of similar chairs sat opposite to the one behind the desk. Looking at the room and the corners of it he made his way to the desk. Signing in exhaustion he fell onto the furnishing behind the desk. Resting his head in calloused hands he let out an exhausted noise of frustration. Dealing with the fat man was tiring even when he was being tormented. Looking at the desk he saw no new reports from his agents. The only article on the wooden structure was a letter from Aizen. His latest and last report had told him Esdeath is close to finishing her campaign in the north. Apparently, she was on the hunt for a lover now. While utterly out of the left field he found himself growing angry at the thought. Whether it be from his old crush on her or his overprotective nature as the eldest cousin he couldn't identify which. Still, he would keep an eye on her and out for her well-being as he had been. It also told him that Kurum should be arriving within a few hours if not sooner. As the old saying goes, speak of the devil and they shall appear, said as the young woman walked out of the shadows. Smiling behind his grinning kitsune-faced mask he turned to greet her. Kurum, it's good to see you back. How was your assignment? It was not a question, it was an order. It was successful, master. Lady Emilia is now the personal attendant of Lady Esdeath, and Lady Esdeath, while distracted by something, is safe and should return soon. Conan has been acting as Lady Emilia's shadow and has reported only 2 attempts of assassination. Neither were a success, and only Lady Esdeath knows of them. As for Aizen, he is safe and has yet to be compromised. He also reports that you should have enough on the minister's son to bring him in and execute him with little interference. That is all, master. Always the formal one when reporting this one. She was a model of what his assassins and shadows should be. Snapping his fingers, the shadows in the corners of the room flickered ever so briefly before disappearing altogether. Pushing himself out from his desk and moving to a couch, he sat down gently while looking right at Kurum. She stared back stoically before she broke into a soft frown. Moving to sit next to him, he wrapped her into a comforting hug. It took a minute before soft, almost mute sobs came from the young woman. Slowly shifting her to his lap, he let the young teen bury herself into his unarmored torso. Humming gently, he rubbed her back reassuringly as she clutched him like a lifeline. He wasn't joking when he told Akame those few months ago that her sister was still able to be saved. He had been working on it since he took her under his wing. Her body was mostly recovered from all the drugs and experiments, and for the most part, she was in perfect physical health after his training program and rehabilitation therapy. Still, there was only so much he could do as her mind and soul still suffered. He was under the impression that the only thing holding her back from full emotional recovery was Akame. He personally thought all that was needed was for the two to reconnect. Well, easier said than done, he was making progress. Kurum no longer wished to kill and reanimate Akame, and Akame no longer wished to kill Kurum. Still, there was plenty of unsettled resentment there, and he had come to care for them both. If he was correct, Kurum had developed something along the lines of love infatuation with him. Akame seemed to have something of a crush if his guess was right as well. Hell, he even knew that Rem was in love with him. While he would never make the first move, he could see himself settling down with any of the women he was close with and having a family together with any of them. It was a shame it likely wouldn't happen. The thought of family made him chuckle lightly. Enough that the now sleeping black-haired woman shifted. Smiling sadly at the depressed and emotionally damaged teen, he sighed in melancholy. He had seen many women and men in the same position while serving the Empire. Even going as far as to put some of them out of their personal hells at times. Letting them suffer in that kind of minced and torment was no less evil than the act itself in his eyes. Thus, he put them out of their misery. He was under no illusions that he was a hero or a good person. He only hoped to be a lesser evil in the world and let the next generation be the ones to finish and establish what he and so many others set out to start. He would never tell any of the women in his life this, but he wasn't sure if he would survive the war. He was knee-deep in the blood of people, evil and innocent alike. Plus there is he didn't bother finishing the thought. Sighing once again, he looked at the man who had just walked into the room. Tall and lean, he could be described as very handsome. With a youthful face and short black hair cut neatly in the back, but with a distinctive fringe of permed bangs falling in front of his face while parting in the center. The man's most distinctive feature was his eyes, which were a piercing, ice-cold blue. He was sporting a decidedly Western dress style in the form of a deep blue collarless short-sleeved dress shirt with a goldenrod trim, matching deep blue slacks and shiny black dress shoes. More distinctive was a long, sweeping trench coat colored light tan with a ribbed goldenrod interior trim. He also had deep blue, wide-mouthed fingerless gloves. The man was Aoshi Shinomori, his second-in-command and the leader of his spy network. "How have you been, Aoshi? Still dealing with that young prodigy of yours?" His tone was colored with mirth that few ever got to receive or see. "Must you bring her up every time, Leader-sama?" His voice was that of a refined noble, even though he was born a commoner. Even if the cold and clipped tone would put others off, Naruto sensed a hidden relief and slight resignation of being teased. Making sure the younger assassin was still asleep, he laid her down gently while covering her up with his coat. He gestured for Aoshi to follow him as they left the room, never noticing stormy gray eyes fluttering open. As the tall duo walked the halls of the secret hideout, they arrived at the mausoleum. The place where members would go to pay respects to their fallen brothers and sisters in arms. They had designed it with the utmost attention to detail and care. A show that even in death they were valued more than just as numbers and drones. Walking to the two newest additions, the leader and his second-in-command paid their silent respects to the now deceased hopefuls. After a silent prayer, Aoshi decided it was time to broach a topic that was much needed and long overdue. "When were you planning on telling me?" He didn't sound angry or even disappointed. He was only curious and subdued. "I should have known you would figure it out." "How long have you known?" He wasn't surprised it was brought up given where they were. Morbid of course, but understandable. "About a year. You hit it well, but I've seen the signs." As much as Aoshi hated to admit it, he was upset at what his leader and closest friend had to combat. "Aoshi, you are one of my closest friends and allies. We are brothers in all but blood. It was never my intention to hide it away. I simply feared how everyone would react. Think about it for a moment from my perspective. If you, Kurum, or heavens forbid my sister knew, how would you react? You would have tried to dissuade me from acting and more than likely tried to force me to resign or at the very least stop working in the field." There was a tense silence that followed. Neither noticing nor sensing the minuscule presence of Kurum, who was trying her hardest to suppress her natural aura. After they left, she had waited and followed at a distance. Naruto, Aoshi dropped all pretenses. "How long before it becomes irreversible?" The world seemed too still at his question. Both Aoshi and Kurum waited on bated breath for his response. Granted, Kurum was both confused and worried at how this conversation was worded. Naruto, the short-haired man's tone turned soft but still held his usual steel. I have a year at most before my heart freezes over. Kurum's world seemed to stop as the colors drained from her sight. She was frozen in fear. No. Not in fear. More of absolute horror. The man she loved with her whole being. The very man she had devoted herself to with zeal. He was dying. He was freezing from the inside out, literally. Is that why you accelerated your plan so much? You knew you were dying. Yes. Raijin Jaka can slow it, but it would be of little help. Esdeath was new to her powers, so she had little control over them. She never could have known that when she stabbed me with her ice rapier back when I was kitsune that her ice would freeze my inner organs. That was why I chose Sode no Shirayuki, even when I knew I would inherit Raijin Jaka. Sode has control over ice, so I had hoped that I could stop it fully. Obviously, I failed quite miserably and managed to slow it down some. Raijin could slow it down more or maybe stop it, but then my body would deteriorate faster, as it's maybe a 20% chance of success. The other possibility is I would burn myself from the inside out and liquefy my organs. My only chance is Esdeath stopping it. As the oldest partas trailed off, both men fell into a somewhat uncomfortable silence at that revelation. They knew Esdeath would likely never do it, as it would require airing a lot of dirty laundry. Plus, he would have to expose himself as both Kitsune and Naruto partas. Something he feared to tell her after all these years of her thinking he died. Kurum was now nearly catatonic. Her mind kept repeating his words, a year at most, followed by before my heart freezes over, he was dying and he couldn't stop it. Only the sadistic ice general could stop it. Even she knew how much of a stretch that was, no matter the relation or blood between them. So when will you tell them? Naruto didn't need to know who. Never. I plan to die a martyr before it happens, with my successor doing the deed. A pause filled the tomb of fallen shadows and assassins alike. Minutes passed before a noise of frustration came from the second in command. Are you sure that is wise? Think about your sister. Or the other women who care for you. Have you thought about them? You never seemed to react to their advances. Now the sailor outfit wearing woman was interested. He always seemed dense when it came to the matters of female love and affection. A hollow laugh of nothing but pain and self-loathing filled the crypt. I have known very well of their affection and adoration. I know Kame has been struggling with her budding feelings as I help her overcome her fear of being forced to kill Kurum. I know Kurum also developed a deep love for me that stemmed from an infatuation. I know of Rem loves me far more than a brother. Why do you think she became a maid? She found out I have a small fetish for it. I mean, lords above Esdeath is looking for love. Esdeath of all people. I know exactly what her type is, and there are only 2 people who fit those specifications, and I'm one of them. Her attendant Emilia has been dropping hints for me since I took the mantle of Shinagami as well. The blue-haired man's tone was filled with nothing but sadness. It hurt him to act oblivious to the romantic advances of the precious women in his life. It was debilitating more often than he would care to admit. Kurum, on the other hand, had tears streaming down the still visible tracks from earlier. The show of liquid emotion was now of happiness instead of her previous despair and pain. Her love interest knew of her feelings. That was all that mattered to her. She had a chance at his heart. Even for as short a time as a year. Do you love them? Naruto's surprise was almost tangible, but his response came with no hesitation. Yes, I do. I love them to the point words can never describe it. It hurts me that I can never reciprocate those feelings for any of them. I simply refuse to let them love a man with a short countdown. It's better that they think I care about them but hold no romantic feelings. The dying man paused for a brief minute. Currently, I've been making preparations for those 2 sisters to try and rekindle their love for each other. It's been my plan for some time after all, and I believe that's the only way for both to fully heal. The air quieted once again as Kurum silently fell to her knees as the tears came faster than before. Her love interest was willing to spend his last year of life just so she could fix her relationship with her elder sister. Willing to show he cared and loved them, but never show the true extent of his affection. Such displays of selfless love and devotion were far and few between. What of your sister? You should know if you die, she will likely follow close after you, correct? I have thought about it quite a lot actually. I have a plan in place to hopefully circumvent that outcome, and it involves Esdeath. You are well aware of my relation to her. That has never been a secret between you, me, or the other senior members. She may be sadistic and to some a monster, but even for all the people who hate and fear her, I will always love her. To me, she will always be that younger cousin that I taught how to hunt, fight, and survive. Esdeath has always adored Rem almost as much as me. I plan to tell her that I found Rem with a bad case of amnesia and near death after their clan's eradication. So, I took her in and raised her as best I could, and recently, she remembered some key names and people. Enough for me to realize that there was a blood tie between the 2. In the spirit of wanting her to be with family, I will ask Esdeath to take her in. It's not foolproof, but it should be workable nonetheless. The atmosphere seemed to lull into a comfortable quiet. Kurum had slipped away after they had finished their conversation. She had a plan and she would make it work no matter the cost. All for the man who gave her life back and was willing to die to fix what still remained broken. By the time her mentor found she had left the sanctuary, it was hours later, and a note was all he found. I have some unfinished business to attend to. I will be back in 3 days. Kurum. The north was conquered, and its denizens either subjugated or dead. In any other circumstance, Esdeath would be over the moon with her ruthless heart soaring in borderline euphoric pleasure at the death and destruction. Yet she felt nothing of the sort. Instead, she only felt hollow and for the life of her couldn't figure out why. The strong live and the weak die, that was her creed and had been since she could remember. Her older cousin had managed to alter it if slightly to the strong live and the weak die, but family sticks together. She could empathize with his sentiment to a small extent. He was strong in both body and spirit, but Ram only had a strong spirit with a weak body. True, the youngest Partas was able to fight, but only for a short time though. Prolonged combat ran a risk of her crippling herself or worse dying. 15 minutes of combat was all she could manage before it started to harm her. 3. Thinking back to an easier time when the three of them would hunt out in the open snowdrifts. Waiting and lurking in the shadows until killing their prey. Those were the memories she cherished most of all even now. She could still feel her icy heart skip a beat when Naruto would smile at her with pride. Incest was not uncommon amongst the Partas clan as few outsiders even joined. Honestly, if their clan had never been wiped out, she would have married him and started a family at some point. Even with his strength eclipsing hers, he never stopped caring for her and Rem. He took the full assault of 3 B-class danger beasts at the age of 6 and killed them after trying to harm her. Bloody, beaten, and torn to ribbons, he never once backed down. Instead, he returned the favor, all the while smiling before fretting over her. Well, he was just short of being mortally wounded. A knock on the door kicked her train of thought into the snow. Turning, she bid them the soft command to enter. The one to enter her temporary domain was the one person she desired to see right now. The white-haired woman always seemed to have perfect timing in these types of situations. At times the ice-themed woman thought she possessed the Tegu spectator given her cognitive, seemingly clairvoyant abilities at times. Setting freshly brewed tea on the table to her right, Emilia started to prepare the drinks for consumption. Even in the mute room, there was no discomfort. She placed the cup before the icy woman before sitting within the peripherals of the blue-haired woman. You seem to be troubled, Esdeath. May I ask what is on your mind? The maid's soft voice was a breath of fresh air for her erratic thoughts. Sipping the divine brew, Esdeath let herself relax if just slightly. The assassin sent from the shinagami, Conan, had slipped into the shadows of the room almost unnoticed. She had never once left Emilia or herself unattended or unguarded. The dull blue-eyed woman was like a hound, always ready to protect her master within an instant. It was a quality she admired and respected. You always seem to know when something is on my mind. Don't you? She chuckled softly under her breath. I have been with you and taking care of you for 5 years. I dare say I know you better than yourself at times. So, would you like to talk about it? A minute pause settled in the room before the female Partas spoke. I find myself feeling off. Yes. Off is the word. I would usually be overjoyed at the completion of a campaign. Yet I feel hollow. Was the term supplied? Yes, hollow. I feel no joy in what I have accomplished. Just empty. What do you think is the cause? Could it be you're thinking of how your cousins and family would feel if they were here now? Yes. That could be it. I loved my cousins far more than any other member of my clan. Would you like to talk about them? You seldom mention your family. Shinigami-sama once told me about how when he lost his clan, he felt lost and hopeless. He said after he opened up about it, he felt much better even if he hopes to find his younger cousin still. Emilia could see the effects her words had on the slightly older woman. Her well-refined features never moved, but her eyes showed the war of emotions taking place. Perhaps it is time to at the very least talk about them. It was mumbled and barely audible, but the white-themed maid heard it nonetheless. I will always be here for you, Esdeath. You are the first person I could call a friend. Friends stick together since they are just slightly extended family. That is what Shinigami-sama believes in, and I believe it too. Still, the cold facade stayed, but the white-clothed woman saw the cracks and holes that formed. The Shinigami had told her of how Esdeath was suffering silently, and at first, she didn't believe it. She initially saw her like many others. A ruthless butcher with little regard for life. Yet as time moved forward, she had seen what he spoke of. It was brief when it showed and was swiftly covered up, but Emilia saw it without fail when it happened. The way Esdeath acted was used to mask how she really felt. The last of the Partas clan's members was horribly lost and had little regard for her own life. The torture and sadism were a part of her naturally, yes, but she let it run rampant to hide all of her other feelings. Trying to bury the feelings and emotions she never confronted. Edith was slowly dying on the inside day by day. Finishing her tea, she made to leave her friend with her thoughts until she started to speak. Naruto Partazar, as the clan called him, the Maelstrom part, as he was always so strong and wise if a bit reckless. He looked a lot like me. Long blue hair with a bit of crimson woven into it. Amethyst eyes that always showed exactly what he was thinking and feeling, but turned to molten gold when he was serious. He had what seemed like a perpetually sunny attitude, but I saw through it. He showed the world that happy and ditzy personality, but underneath was a calm and collected warrior. He never once flinched when in the face of adversity. Instead, he chose to fight it head-on with his fists doing the talking. I always called him an idiot for doing it. But I loved him. I loved him for his never surrender and never give up attitude. He always had that damned fox-like Cheshire grin of his on that made even the brightest of stars seem dull. Even when the others chastised him for associating with weaker people, he always retorted with this line. Those who abandon the family are scum, but those who abandon a weaker family member are worse than scum. I'd rather be scum than leave those who can't fight behind. Moisture started to make itself present in her eyes as her face refused to change from stony indifference. Emilia would have thought it her imagination if not for the smallest of twitches on her lips. He would always dote on me and his sister. Rem Partas. You remind me of her so much that at times it's scary. She had both of us wrapped around her little infant fingers. You should have seen Naruto the day she was born. He looked like he was king of the world. She was born the day her mother died, which caused her body to become weak and susceptible to illness. Her mother and my aunt, Kushina Partas, lost her husband right after she got pregnant with Rem. Her whole pregnancy was tough and filled with sickness. Her body couldn't handle the strain of birth, so she died soon after. Naruto from that moment forward declared that he would never leave me alone, and Rem would have the same promise. He helped raise me since my father wasn't around much, as well as raise Rem. A 7-year-old frontier boy all but raising his 5-year-old cousin and newborn little sister. He was like a superhero in my eyes. A soft hiccup escaped before she could stop it. But the soft smile, Emilia shifted so she sat next to the emotional woman before wrapping said woman in a sisterly hug, and like a dam over capacity, Edith found the tears break the floodgates and spill down her pale skin. She hadn't cried since the incident with the danger beasts back when she was 4. Now 18 years of repressed and bottled up emotion spilled forth in a tsunami of uncontrollable shudders and choked sobs. Tears for her wise and caring uncle. Tears for her adorable baby cousin. Tears for her family and clan. Tears for her loving and confident older cousin. The only male in her life to ever make her feel loved. The first and only man she ever loved and now missed for all of these years. Gurum was a woman on a mission. A desperate mission to be sure. Something that required her to push aside petty vendettas and personal problems. Where nothing but her objective was important. All for one reason. Save the man she loved from death. Being a member of the Akatsuki and a senior member of the Shinagami no T had left her privy to classified information. Information that would lead her to her targets. Naruto had never once lied to her outright. It was always half-truths and white lies to motivate her to discover things on her own. Such was how she came to resent the current empire even after being conditioned for undying loyalty. She was annoyed at first with this teaching method, but her master always repeated the words of a former member. Look underneath the underneath. The one who said that was originally a senior member as well. The place as Naruto's bodyguard was his to start, now hers to continue to uphold. He had been the blue-haired assassin's childhood protector sensei, an honor that he wore with pride and zeal. He died maybe a year or so before she joined the ranks in a failed attempt on Lady Rem's life. Naruto had gone on a crusade of justice soon after the act. That was part of how she first got taken away from his nigh ever-present shadows. He was taking out threats to his family and organization. It was a reason she fully understood and could never blame him for. She would have done the same before Akame's betrayal. Before her sister abandoned her and left her for dead. Now she had to push those emotional wounds to the side so she could save the man who stole her heart. There were 3 other people she would need to make her plan work, and she loathed one of them. Her strategy was simple in theory, but monumental in execution. First, she would have set aside her quarrel with her older sister. As much as that irked her to no end, it was needed for her plan. She needed him to focus on other things while they moved behind his back. Second, she needed to get in contact with Lady Rem and explain what she had heard in the mausoleum. Naruto said he never planned to tell anyone about his condition. She assumed he played it off as overworking his Tigu. It was something he would do with the explanation being believable. Third, she would need to convince both Akame and Rem to help her save him, which was arguably the easiest part. Granted, she had no intention of letting a place in his heart slip through her fingers. The only way this would work properly was to work together to win his heart. It was irritating and less than ideal, but a harem was their only chance as a collective as he would never pick and break the hearts of the others. Fourth, and probably the hardest, was to get Esdeath to listen and agree to save him. While in the north she saw firsthand how Esdeath still thought of her cousins, loved them even to this day. Conan's reports had only confirmed and cemented that fact. Despite being called a heartless butcher, she still cared for them dearly. The only problem was proving their identities to the cold woman. The final step was to get the object of their collective affection to be healed. He was resigned and had made many plans for his death. Both before, during, and after. If they tried to spring this on him, it could backfire given his talent for contingency plans. You just never knew with that man. To make these plans work, she had made liberal use of her authority as the Shinigami's bodyguard and a senior member of 2 organizations he ran. With that level of power, she had pulled the files on Night Raid. Everything from its members, movements, mission dossier, to active contracts. She was now looking through the information they had gathered on the assassin group. To be more precise, she was reading the profiles their spymaster had compiled. Opening the closed file holder, she started with the first profile. Name: Nagenda. Age: 26. Gender: female. Height: 172 centimeters. Weight: unknown. Eye: purple hair. Silver blood type. A family: unknown. Other: ex-general for the Empire. Lost her right arm and eye. Ex-user of the Tigu Roman artillery. Pumpkin: current leader of Night Raid. Skilled markswoman and firearms user. Presumed skilled in CQC. Threat level: high. Approach with caution. Has impeccable spatial awareness. The longest recorded shot was almost 3 kilometers. Always presumed to be armed. Guram had to admit, for a crippled woman, Nagenda still had the bark to back the bite. Then again, you don't become a general in your late teenage years without reason. Flipping, she looked at a green-haired man. Name: Lubbock. Age: 18. Gender: male. Height: 165 centimeters. Weight: unknown. Eye: green hair. Green blood type. Ab family: unknown. Other: ex-soldier for the Empire. Pervert: the user of the Tigu infinite uses. Crossed tail. Keeps a bookstore in the capital. Skilled trap maker. Has exceptional skill in CQC. Uses his Tigu to trap the area of Night Raid's base. Known pervert. Threat level: medium. Uses deception and fakes injuries to gain surprise advantage. Prefers a defensive combat style. CQC is recommended. Has Tigu wire wrapped around his torso for hidden protection. So, get close before he notices her presence and be wary of the hideout's perimeter. Good to know. Still, she frowned at the pervert comment. She already had to deal with that old toad-like man the previous Shinigami employed. Next was a tall and imposing man, to be certain. She got a slightly flamboyant vibe from the man just looking at him. Name: Bullet. Age: 25. Gender: male. Height: 185 centimeters. Weight: unknown. Eye: blue hair. Black blood type. O family: unknown. Other: known as 100-man Slayer Bullet. Ex-soldier of the Empire. The user of the Tigu demon armor. Incursio. Highly skilled in unarmed and weapon-based combat. Openly gay. Said to be close to the level of Esdeath before defection. Threat level: very high. Flee on sight unless seated or senior member. Arguably the second strongest of the group, Bullet was praised by many generals during his time in the Empire. Noted personally by General Esdeath and ex-General Liver for combat prowess. Even had praise from the previous Shinigami for his skill in combat. Has remarkably high spatial awareness and reaction time. Master of martial arts and weapon combat. Able to fight for many hours on end. Has mastered Tigu Incursio to an extremely high degree, capable of summoning the armor without the key. She shuddered to think of fighting this monster in combat. He seemed like the previous and current Shinigamis in combat to a lesser degree. Plus, given he was praised by her mentor's predecessor, spoke of his competency. She would have to be careful and avoid the man as much as possible. Still, she chuckled at the openly gay comment. Their spymaster must have been slightly unnerved his experience. Looking at the next file, she thought of one thing. Too much pink. Name: Mine. Age: 15. Gender: female. Height: 155 centimeters. Weight: unknown. Eye: pink hair. Pink blood type. B family: unknown. Other: member of the Western tribes. The user of the Tigu Roman artillery. Pumpkin: skilled markswoman and firearm user. Self-proclaimed genius sniper and has skills to back it up. The longest shot was 2.5 kilometers away. Adept in CQC. Threat level: medium. Prefers ranged combat and leaves her back open to attack. Mostly support in combat situations. Is capable of CQC combat for short periods. Very sharp eyesight. Guram made a noise of disgust. One of Naruto's golden rules. Never leave you back open. You will die if you do. Speed fighters and CQC opponents were this girl's nightmare. Kurum was her nightmare in combat. Next profile. Name. Sheila age. 24 gender. Female height. 160 centimeters weight. Unknown eye. Purple hair. Purple blood type. Ab family. Deceased. Other. Grew up at the low end of the empire. The user of the Tegu cutter of creation. Extus. Skilled in weapon combat. Airheaded. Redacted information. Threat level. High. Her unique mindset allows her to kill with zero hesitation. Ruthless in combat. Natural talent when killing. Has exceptional talent with battle plans. Master of weapon combat. Near mastery of CQC. The purple-haired woman's file drew many questions. Redacted information meant one of two things in a profile. Narrowing her eyes, Kurum looked at the odd wording. She saw a familiar pattern. A method of hidden messaging that was known only in the highest of ranks. The hidden message made her widen her eyes. She would have to make a note of that and talk to the woman. Name. Leon age. 24 gender. Female height. 170 centimeters weight. Unknown eye. Gold hair. Blonde blood type. O family. Unknown. Other. Grew up in the slums of the empire. The user of the Tegu, the king of beasts transformation. Lionel. Possible alcoholic. Skilled in CQC. Strong sense of morality. Threat level. Medium. Most of her capabilities come from the Tegu Lionel. See Tegu guide for reference. Skilled in manipulation and seduction tactics. Highly skilled in stealth and sneak attacks. Leon would be relatively simple to deal with. Get rid of the belt and she was reduced to non-enhanced CQC. If she activated the Tegu, then an instant kill shot would be necessary. Still, she had the advantage of speed. The next file almost caused her to lose her cool. Staring right back at her was. Name. Akame age. 18 gender. Female height. 164 centimeters weight. Unknown eye. Red hair. Black blood type. A family. Biological family. Unknown, sold into slavery by them. Adoptive father. Gazuki, deceased. Sister. Kurum, officially. Deceased, unofficially. Active member of the Shinagami no T and Akatsuki. Other. Known as Akame of the Demon Sword Murasame. Ex-member of the Empire. Ex-member of the Elite 7. Ex-potential recruit for the Shinagami no T. Ex-potential member of the Akatsuki. Older sister of Kurum. Killer of Gazuki. The user of the Tegu one-cut killer. Murasame. Was at one point a candidate for the mantle of Shinagami. Huge appetite for meat. Prefers danger beast meat. Seems to be socially awkward. Seems to have developed feelings for the current Shinagami. Threat level. Very high. Flee on sight unless senior member. Arguably the strongest member of Night Raid. Master swordswoman. Can fight on par with general level opponents. Has immense physical strength capable of breaking bones and rupturing organs. Tremendous speed and dexterity capable of leaving after images. Extremely high spatial awareness. Gives off no killing intent while fighting. Capable of keeping up with the current Shinigami when he fights at half power with no Tegu. Capable of controlling the curse of Murasame to an above average degree. Extremely high resistance to poisons. Drew blood on the current Shinigami once before forfeiting. Kurum silently bristled in rage at the paper in her hands. At the same time though she felt overwhelming pride. She hadn't forgiven her sister for leaving her, not yet anyway. She would have to push that aside for now. Her pleasure came from the fact she could say with confidence she stood on par with her sister. Everything said in this report were things she had accomplished herself. She could say with satisfaction that Naruto had been scarred by her a few times. Several of the scars on his chest were courtesy of their spars. Looking down in confusion she saw two extra profiles. The two were different from the others. There was an archaic array of symbols covering both. Tapping her Akatsuki ring to it, the symbols revealed what was hidden beneath the papers. Name. Ramjin Rixai. Parta's age. 17 gender. Female height. 154 centimeters weight. 40 kilograms eye. Blue hair. Blue blood type. B family. Mother. Kishina Uzumaki Partas, deceased. Father. Minato Namikaze Partas, deceased. Grandfather. Yamamoto Shijikuni Jinrixai Partas, deceased. Cousin. Esdeith Partas, General of the Empire. Brother. Naruto Uzumaki Partas, Shinigami Shadow Hand of the Empire, leader founder of the Akatsuki, hired contractor with Night Raid, head assassin of House Jinrixai, shinobi in service of Rem Partas. Other. Matriarch of the Partas clan. Head of House Jinrixai. Lord of Naruto Partas. Head maid of House Jinrixai. Skilled in CQC and weapon combat. Skilled field combat medic. Skilled doctor surgeon. Master of household chores activities. Master chef. Seems to have a large brother complex. Seems to have a maid fetish. Threat level. Unknown. As the youngest sister of the current Shinigami, she is untouchable under threat of death from the man. Skilled in combat, she can hold her own for short periods. She is only placed in the nitrate files on a formality note. She is to be left alone unless she begins the interaction. Do know that the Shinigami has a massive sister complex. A storm gray-eyed assassin nodded her head in understanding. Lady Rem was only here on a formality. Probably why the file was sealed so extensively. Naruto was a stickler for accuracy, and these documents were only available for the seated members. Seeing as seated members of the Shinigami no T were fanatically loyal to Naruto, herself included, it probably lessened his fears. The next one, however, shocked her. Name: Naruto Uzumaki. Parta's age: 24. Gender: male. Height: 186 centimeters. Weight: 85 kilograms. Eye: purple. Hair: blue. Blood type: B family. Mother: Kushina Uzumaki. Parta's deceased. Father: Minato Namikaze. Parta's deceased. Grandfather: Yamamoto Shijikuni Jinrikisai. Parta's deceased. Cousin: Esdeath Parta's general of the empire. Sister: Ram Jinrikisai. Parta's matriarch of the Parta's clan, head of House Jinrikisai, lord of Naruto. Parta's head maid of House Jinrikisai. Other: current Shinigami Shadow Hand of the Empire. Leader founder of the Akatsuki. Hired contractor with Nitrate. Head assassin of House Jinrikisai. Shinobi in service of Rem. Parta's. Ex-assassin Kitsune. Unofficial general. Spy master of the Empire. Known for his prowess as a master assassin. Master of CQC and weapon combat. Has unnaturally high charisma. The user of the Tigu Eye Sculptor. Sode no Shirayuki. The user of the Tigu All-Consuming Flame. Raijin Jaka. As a confirmed sister complex. Has a confirmed maid fetish. Threat level: flee and pray. You are not his target. Naruto. Parta's is widely considered to be the strongest assassin and warrior in the empire. Known to have fought the previous Shinigami Yamamoto to a draw. Known to have fought both Esdeath and Budo simultaneously and won. Known to have fought the 4 Rakshasa demons and won. Known to have fought Esdeath and the 3 beasts simultaneously and won. Known to have fought and defeated the original Elite 7 in combat. Has killed most of the Wild Hunt members personally. Has killed half of the group of Terror and its founder. Has killed many revolutionary splinter cells. Has killed several super-class danger beasts in single combat including 2 tyrants. Has killed several tribes in the frontier. Had ties to the Orberg clan before their death's disbandment. The young assassin shuddered at the thought of fighting her mentor. He was a monster in combat and on the battlefield. She would know. She had seen him on the battlefield many times. He would tower over you like an angry god. A god of death and retribution. He was there to cast judgment on you. If you failed, you died. If you tried to run, you died. If he was angry, you died. There was no jury in your sentence. There was only the judge and executioner, and that was him. When out of combat though, he was a different person altogether. While serious, he had a mischievous side of him. He would tease those under his command, often joking and making light. He was a caring individual and would listen to your woes. He was empathetic when you failed an assignment or were injured. He encouraged you to get stronger and fix your flaws. When he would scold you, it was light and meant to help you better yourself as opposed to belittle and shun. The amethyst-eyed man had been her rock. Her happy place. Her perch to settle and cry upon after her wings were broken. He was her whole world. The center of everything. Those magenta eyes softened when looking at her, and warmth would fill her chest under that gaze soon after. She would do anything for that warmth. Kill anybody for that warmth. Nothing was too much in the name of seeing those warm eyes. She would save the person who stood as her pillar of strength. She would make sure his gaze never froze. She would thaw his freezing heart. Even if it killed her. Sighing, she closed and returned the papers to where they came from. Staring out at the horizon, she observed the structure in the distance. The base of Nitrate was just a few miles from her position. If she failed, it would spell ruin on her plans and hurt her love interest. For this self-imposed mission, she had forgotten her usual sailor outfit. Instead, she now wore the armor of the Shinigami no T. A mix of samurai and ninja attire. Her whole body was covered by a black bodysuit not dissimilar to the one Naruto wore under his armor. Her torso was now covered by hardened ceramic overlapping and intersecting plates, leaving few openings. She kept the gauntlets and shin plating from her usual attire along with the belt. Her lower half was covered by a black hamaka with black open-toed combat sandals. To finish off her uniform, she had a black coat, not unlike the one her master wore when they first met. Reaching inside the coat, she pulled out a porcelain mask. Unlike Naruto's, however, this mask was stained black with the visage of a wolf stalking prey. Smiling briefly, she put it on before pulling up her hood. Looking at her reflection in the nearby stream, she nodded. It was mid-afternoon by the time she was close enough to the base to not be detected. All that was left was to wait for her target. Ram was having an exceptionally good day. She woke up snuggled into her elder brother's bare chest like usual. Granted he felt a bit cooler than usual, but she chalked it up to his use of the ice-based tegu. Instead of waking him up immediately, she chose to stay there for a while. After her brother woke up and left the shared bed, much to her silent disappointment, she got dressed as well. Moving to the kitchen of Nitrade's base, the young maid got to work on breakfast. Nothing too fancy, mind you. While she cooked, Naruto had wandered off with Akame to spar, she assumed. Once everyone was back and fed, her brother left saying he had potential recruits to find. Najenda left as well, saying she had to report to the Revolutionary Army HQ. Bullet was out shadow sparring and training most of the day. She honestly liked the tall man. He was a good company and someone she enjoyed talking to. Minor, as Rem coined her, the pink banshee, was in the capital shopping or something of that nature. Sheil was quiet as always, reading her books in the lounging area. Though she swore the woman watched her like a hawk at times. Lubbock was in the capital as well, running his bookshop, while Leon was either boozing or seducing men out of their money. Probably both. Akame was out hunting beasts for meat, so nothing unusual on that front. So, with everyone busy or gone, she had taken to cleaning the base. While it was large and had many rooms to clean, she had a hidden weapon at her disposal. A forbidden technique she picked up watching other nobles and maids of various households. Something she developed for her brother exclusively. She called it Oni-sama's perfect wife. She had spent years gathering the knowledge and practicing it on her grandfather's temple. It was the ability to clean any building no matter the size both quickly and efficiently while looking like the perfect housewife. Now she was down at a slow stream cleaning both Naruto's and her clothing. As she was scrubbing his kimono clean, she felt a presence watching her. While she wasn't combat-oriented, she could still kick ass. She had to be able to keep her brother in line. Standing up, she patted the dirt off her skirt-clad knees while looking right at the area she felt the gaze come from. Ram was well accustomed to her brother's assassins or shadows following her from time to time. It was his way of keeping her safe while he was gone for long periods. The flash of black and red was enough for her to know who was there. It was one of the Akatsuki. "You can come out now. I know the standard protocol you follow." She honestly was both flattered and annoyed by how her older brother's agents and members worked. Unobtrusive, professional, and quite just like him. The figure in black blurred into her field of view. Even in the late afternoon, she could follow their movements. The rainbow of the setting sun was what greeted Rem as she looked to the horizon. Sighing, she gazed back at the kneeling figure. "Lady Rem. How are you today?" A soft and muffled voice called out. "I am fine, and you, Akame-san?" She knew who this agent was. She was a more common agent that protected her. Regardless, Rem and the figure were in enemy territory, so she had to play along. "I wish I was here under better circumstances, I'm afraid, milady." Rem could hear the discomfort in the figure's voice. "Shall we talk alone then?" the maid said pointedly at the figure hiding in the canopy near the trail from the base. "There is no need, she might as well come out. This affects all of us here." Shuffling of cloth and leaves was the reply. Akame had been in the area while hunting. She had been prowling the area hunting danger beasts for meat. She had found a small flock of evil birds upstream from where the maid girl was cleaning. When the girl had left to wash their dirty laundry, Akame had chosen to watch from the brush. The maid-themed girl made these once tedious chores seem easy and almost fun. So being the pragmatist she was, she sat down and simply watched. It almost certainly had nothing to do with her budding feelings on the maid's taller and handsome brother. Nothing at all. Right. When the figure had landed while kneeling before the blue-haired girl, she tensed. Upon hearing the ensuing conversation, she relaxed. Naruto simply sent his agents to watch the girl. The black-haired woman was preparing to leave before the figure in the clearing called her out. A quick internal debate was had. Sighing, she blurred next to them. No sense drawing this out after all. She was still wary of the figure as it stood. While nearly untraceable, she could still feel the distaste and anger when the cloaked agent looked at her. Curious. "You wish to speak? Please do." A clipped tone spoke. "Yes. Lady Rem, I don't really know how to bring this up." The figure on closer inspection from Akame proved female. So, this agent was a female. Interestingly, she felt a connection if only vaguely. "Please. Speak your mind, Akame-san. I can practically feel your apprehension." Bless Lady Rem's kind soul. Truly, she was a kindred spirit in a cruel world. She took out a small device with a few buttons. "I think it better if you listen to this before anyone could ask the recording played. When were you planning on telling me?" That sounded like Aoshi Shinomori. Rem had interacted with the man many times in the past. He had even been her guard at times. Akame, on the other hand, reported to him when she was still employed by the Empire. He often gave her assignments in person as opposed to messenger birds. He was a good man while being equally skilled as an assassin. The question now was, why did his voice indicate sadness? "I should have known you would figure it out." "How long have you known?" It was easy to know who was talking now. The voice was Naruto Parta's and he sounded resigned. About a year you hid it well, but I've seen the signs. Why did he sound depressed? This was definitely worrying the two who hadn't been there for it. Even now, Kurum had trouble listening to this. The phantom emotions ran hot and wild. Ayashi, you are one of my closest friends and allies. We are brothers in all but blood. It was never my intention to hide it away, I simply feared how everyone would react. Think about it for a moment from my perspective. If you, Kurum, or heavens forbid my sister knew, how would you react? You would have tried to dissuade me from acting and more than likely tried to force me to resign or at the very least stop working in the field. There was a tense silence that claimed the clearing. Nobody could say anything. What was just played was no longer just worrying. No. It had evolved into full-blown fear. Naruto, the voice of Ayashi, was cold and clipped now. Akame and Rem felt a pit form in their stomachs. Kurum behind her mask was close to tears. She hated causing Lady Rem pain. How long before it becomes irreversible? The world seemed too still at the question. Naruto, the tone turned soft but still held some steeled resolve. I have a year at most before my heart freezes over. Rem fell to her knees. No. She refused to believe this. It was a cruel joke. Yes, a cruel prank concocted by Kurum for some reason. That's what she wanted to say. What she wanted to believe. Reality had different plans, it seemed. The older black-haired assassin was frozen. Like when Kurum first learned her world lost color. Blacks, whites, and various grays were all she could see. This was impossible. Simply impossible. That man was an insurmountable pillar of strength and justice. He was her last bastion of hope for seeing her estranged little sister. He couldn't die. Not when she had just regained hope. Is that why you accelerated your plan so much? You knew you were dying. Ayashi's words brought them back to reality. They could only hope this was a joke. Sadly, the next word shattered those dreams quite violently. Yes. Raijin Jaka can slow it, but it would be of little help. Esdeath was new to her powers, so she had little control over them. She never could have known that when she stabbed me with her ice rapier back when I was kitsune that her ice would freeze my inner organs. That was why I chose Sode no Shirayuki, even when I knew I would inherit Raijin Jaka. Sode has control over ice, so I had hoped that I could stop it fully. Obviously, I failed quite miserably and managed to slow it down some. Raijin could slow it down more or maybe stop it, but then my body would deteriorate faster, as it's maybe a 20% chance of success. The other possibility is I would burn myself from the inside out and liquefy my organs. My only chance is Esdeath stopping it. Tears streamed from the youngest Parta's member in waterfalls. She couldn't even manage a sob. Her face was quickly being stained by angry red tear tracks. She could barely register Kurum hugging her. She was catatonic. Arms sat limp at her sides with her now useless legs. Even as the liquid show of emotion continued, her eyes stayed open. The only problem was they had dulled. They seemed lifeless. Dead to the world. Rem wasn't here right now. Only her physical body existed now. Akame was wholly despondent. Much like her younger sister, her own mind kept repeating his words. A year at most before my heart freezes over. He was dying and he couldn't stop it. Similar to Rem, her eyes lost all luster. She didn't cry. She couldn't. The shocking revelation was too much for her to handle. She had placed her heart within Naruto's hands only for his to freeze over. He spent these past few months giving hers the warmth it never received. While he was heating and mending hers, his heart was losing that very heat. He was giving it to her because he knew his heart was becoming ice. In a literal sense. So when will you tell them? Never. I plan to die a martyr before it happens, with my successor doing the deed. The heiress of the Partas continued to stare forward. She couldn't think. Couldn't feel. Her world was crumbling. Flashes of her grandfather leaving played like a horror film in her mind's eye. A loop of all the people who died in her life ran rampant in her mind. The isolation she would feel. The sadness would cripple her. She would die. She should die. With him. So they can be together forever. If her precious Ani-sama didn't enter heaven with her, she would, without hesitation, follow him to hell. At the very least they could be together for eternity. Are you sure that is wise? Think about your sister. Or the other women who care for you. Have you thought about them? You never seemed to react to their advances. Luster returned to the distraught pair. Did he know? Did he love them? What did he think of them? So many doubts flooded their thoughts. At the same time, however, hope took root within. I have known very well of their affection and adoration. I know Kame has been struggling with her budding feelings as I help her overcome her fear of being forced to kill Kurum. I know Kurum also developed a deep love for me that stemmed from an infatuation. I know of Rem loves me far more than a brother. Why do you think she became a maid? She found out I have a small fetish for it. I mean, lords above, Esdeath is looking for love. Esdeath of all people. I know exactly what her type is, and there are only 2 people who fit those specifications, and I'm one of them. Her attendant Emilia has been dropping hints for me since I took the mantle of shinagami as well. The blue-haired man's tone was filled with pain and sorrow. It was clear that acting aloof and unaware hurt him. How much he hurt was something that they couldn't know. The 3 women didn't think they wanted to know on second thought. The simple idea was far too painful to consider. Do you love them? This would be the defining moment for everyone. The moment of truth they longed for. Words that would either break them or fill them with new resolve. A single syllable word was the deciding factor now. Sink or swim. That was what they were brought to. Yes, I do. That settled it. Color returned to the world in a flash. Resolution set to fire burning as hot as Raijin Jaka's trump card. Clarity fell on the Night Raid members. That same fire made its way to their eyes with Kurum watching. The wielder of Yatsufusa could feel the burning flame that was called determination. Now all that was left was for Kurum to convince them to go along with her plan. I love them to the point words can never describe it. It hurts me that I can never reciprocate those feelings for any of them. I simply refuse to let them love a man with a short countdown. They should think I care about them but hold no romantic feelings. The trio of women sat with barely restrained interest. To live your life wanting to love but staying silent for the sake of the ones you love. That was just like the blue-haired assassin of the empire. Selfless and willing to kill anyone even at his own detriment. It was all in the name of those he loved. Currently I've been making preparations for those 2 sisters to try and rekindle their love for each other. It's been my plan for some time after all, and I believe that's the only way for both to fully heal. Akame's eyes widened slightly. She had heard him say that Kurum could be saved. She believed him. Placed her faith in him. She wanted to hope that he was right. But to hear those words said by him. To be said in such a way that made you believe him implicitly. He was sure it would work. Hell or high water he would do it. Even if he had to kill everyone in his path. The heavens would burn if he commanded it. Hell would freeze as he forged on. That was the extent of his will. Not even the gods themselves could break this man. He would break them. What of your sister? You should know if you die, she will likely follow close after you, correct? Rem was listening closely. Her brother loved her. She would never doubt that. He was wrapped around her finger and he knew it. Yet, he never complained. He in fact wore it like a badge. Yamamoto often criticized him for this. Granted he was the same at the end of the day. The bottom line was that it was Naruto's greatest strength and his Achilles heel put together. If anyone hurt her, they died. If they looked at her funny, they died. If they bad-mouthed her, they died. She had watched him kill, maim, and torture all who tried those things. It was why Akame was taken from under his nose. He was a fanatic about his family's safety. I have thought about it quite a lot actually. I have a plan in place to hopefully circumvent that outcome, and it involves Esdeath. The red and blue-eyed women were waiting. This would be interesting. You are well aware of my relation to her. That has never been a secret between you, me, or the other senior members. She may be sadistic and to some a monster, but even for all the people who hate and fear her, I will always love her. To me, she will always be that younger cousin that I taught how to hunt, fight, and survive. That was a shock to the red assassin and blue maid. Rem knew that Esdeath and her brother were close. They always had been. Naruto would often reminisce about their times in the northern snow plains. Hunting together. Eating together. Surviving together. He would comment that if the clan were still around and never got attacked, he would have likely married Esdeath. Rem wasn't at all disgusted. Ski knew very well it was common in the clan. There was enough blood distance to keep deformities limited and rare. Plus she wasn't any better. She loved her brother like one would their lover. Akane was thinking about what was admitted by the man she was enamored by. He had trained the ice general, or at least when they were young he helped. It made sense though. Having grown up on the frontier and working in those areas frequently, she had some knowledge about customs. The usual one that the assassin came across was simple. The strong survive while the weak die, the natural selection they dubbed it. She saw it in action often. Strong clans and tribes would wipe out or assimilate smaller ones. Rumor had it that the Partas clan was regarded as one of the strongest. So much so that an alliance between the 2nd through 6th strongest clans was formed. Even with the Partas clan alone against 5 other tribes, they wiped the attackers out. A total Pyrrhic victory for the invaders. The 6 strongest clans destroyed each other, leaving the north in disarray. The power vacuum led to smaller clans and tribes to fight. All-out war was the result. The Great Clan War was what it was called. Tribes fighting for non-existent leftovers. Everyone trying to claim the seat of the strongest. In the end, a bandit warlord took that throne. Later declaring independence and war on the empire itself. That was the reason the last Partas was sent. To quell the insurrection and wipe out any resistance. Esdeath has always adored Rem almost as much as me. I plan to tell her that I found Rem with a bad case of amnesia and near death after their clan's eradication. So, I took her in and raised her as best I could, and recently, she remembered some key names and people. Enough for me to realize that there was a blood tie between the two. In the spirit of wanting her to be with family, I will ask Esdeath to take her in. It's not foolproof, but it should be workable nonetheless. It was a solid plan too. Claim that he found a child alone in a war-torn village. Raise them as your own. Then as she remembers events, document them and offer to return the child to their, albeit distant, family. Stereotypical yes, but solid nonetheless. After stewing in the revelation brought to the maid and assassins alike sat in silence. Each one of them with much to think about. Each with their own demons to think about. This continued for some time. It was broken swiftly by Akame turning to the akame masked individual. Red eyes appraising their stance and figure. Who are you exactly? A straightforward question in every regard. Something to be expected. There was no surprise it was asked, and yet Kurum was still stunned. She was at war with herself. She wanted nothing more than to leave. She had tried to prepare herself. Steel her resolve. Push past the notion to flee. Yet all of her mental prep was washed away in moments. Those red orbs seemed to haunt her. Torment her. Judge her. She knew it was stupid. A trick of the mind. That didn't stop the feeling. It was now or never. She needed to do this. For the man she loved and his hard work. The work to give her back her second greatest desire behind being his wife. To have her family. Trepidation plaguing her thoughts, she crushed them violently. Yes. For the man she loved. For the sake of his freezing heart. For the place as his wife or at least one of them. That was the end goal. Her end game. Staring right back at her older sister with no fear. It was now. Flicking the hood back, her hair blew softly in the late afternoon breeze. Moving to remove the mask, she paused for the briefest of moments. Her resolve never wavered. She would face her sister head on, consequences be damned. The mask unleashed from her face, she moved it away at a snail's pace. The showdown would begin. Akame looked at the now unmasked figure. The softest of gasps left her lips. Tears from before now gather once more. Small digits raced to cover her now open mouth with a slight quiver. Her petite frame shuddered in tandem with her ragged breath. Her body felt heavy. So heavy that her knees nearly buckled. There was no physical weight though. Only the maelstrom of emotions that rage in her body. A tsunami that was pouring from her bloodshot eyes. Cheeks red with irritation at the salty liquid traveling over them. She was a mess of feelings. Contradicting emotions rushed through her shaking body with no leash. An eternity seemed to pass as her hand left her face. Unsure if what she was looking at was real, she could only manage small steps. Each one increased the invisible force on her body. Minutes passed as her dainty fingers touched the figure's tear-stained face. It was like looking into a mirror for both. Akame managed to find her voice through sheer force of will. I'd why yo you, KK Kurum. The ragging emotions had left her crippled. Was this a vivid dream? A hallucination? An illusion-based tegu? She couldn't tell. She wanted this to be a reality. The irrefutable truth would be from K the Kurum lookalike's next words. That would be her answer, and she didn't have to wait long at all. Yes, I'm here. It's been a while, hasn't it? Akame ni-chan. Esdeath sat in silence with the north now to her back. Instead of horseback, she opted for a carriage. She had much to think about, and this setting allowed for private thinking. Her talk with Emilia sat at the seat of her thoughts. It made her doubt many things. What would Naruto think of her? She would never admit it, but his opinion did matter to her. Even now. She absolutely refused to believe that he was dead. It took some time, but looking back many things made little sense. He would have never died like that. Her uncle, Yamamoto, wouldn't have either. The further she pondered, the more she questioned many events. The previous shinagami was far too similar to her uncle for it to be a coincidence. Plus that head maid of his house was oddly familiar. His head assassin was a mystery wrapped in an enigma. She had seen him once or twice, but he was always covered head to toe in black garbs. She had caught a glimpse of his hair once for a moment. Blue with red woven into it. The same as her cousin. Emilia in all her noble glory stayed by the general's side. She could see the gears turning in her mind. When you took the sadistic personality and grin away, she was a stunning woman. Soft porcelain skin with no blemishes. Soft blue eyes that complemented her hair. Her delicate yet well-refined features gave her an almost aristocratic appearance. For all her training, her skin remained soft with light calluses showing she worked. Being her confidant and friend, Emilia had seen the woman nude. The noble maid was a bit jealous of the frontier woman. She was taller than most women she had seen, herself included. Esdeath had that hergless figure men often looked for and women strived to obtain. The only difference was that Esdeath had muscle tempered from years of combat. It made her envious when she saw it. Well-sculpted abdominal muscles with a large bust, slender figure and wide hips. Everything Emilia wished for and had obtained after meeting the ice woman. The only problem was she was still smaller and less refined than her friend. Conan was another thing on her mind. She looked very close to Esdeath in terms of figure. Tall with wide childbearing hips, moderate bust, a well-muscled body, and an hergless figure. That's where any similarities ended. The silent woman had dark blue hair with dull blue-gray eyes. Lavender eyeshadow accented her natural beauty well. The biggest thing about her was her neutral look that never changed and strange tastes in piercings. She had stated she was a tool for the shinagami to use as he saw fit. Well, it bothered the white-themed woman at first. She got over it as she poked and prodded at the woman. It took time, but she had learned how she came under the employment of the current shadow hand. It was a tragic story. Speaking of the tool of the shinagami, she stayed in the shadows of the carriage. Her mission would soon end. She looked forward to seeing her mater again. The white woman had managed to somehow get her to tell her story. Truthfully, she couldn't feel anything about it. Her emotions were gone. Or suppressed to the point she couldn't feel or use them. Everything was mundane when she looked and interacted. She could only feel something in one particular setting. Being with her master. Lord Naruto was the only person that could get her to feel anything. She shook her head to clear such thoughts. Mission first, everything else later. The trip would let the three women think. Esdeath was deep in her own mind. Trying to piece together action and event. All of them were clues to the ultimate mystery. Were her cousins alive and in the Empire? Emilia was drifting in and out of sleep as the day grew to close. Thinking about Conan and Esdeath was enough to exhaust even the most patient of people. Conan just continued to look ahead with a blank gaze. Her upbringing playing in the background of her mind. Her time with her master. Even her past few months with the blue general and white maid played. The silence would leave anyone else uncomfortable, but for the three women, it was welcomed like an old lover. It would be a long ride, and silence would do just fine with them. What if Naruto is a general? Akame ga kill end here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.